o'clock. Welcome to the conservation meeting on July 18th, 2018. First thing on the agenda is Merrill Pond's continuation.
Make a motion to waive the reading of Merrill Ponds. Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Hello, everyone. Dan Buttrick, Ty and Bond. I guess I wanted to pick up where we last were on the discussion of removal of Welsh Pond Dam, Putnam Pond Dam, and protection of the Kinder Morgan Tennessee Gas competing pipeline in between the two ponds. Tonight, or at least the last time we met, which I believe was back in May, there were questions raised by the commission about wildlife habitat, the wildlife habitat evaluation that was performed, along with some other interests of the Wetland Protection Act and the Stormwater Bylaw. So I brought some people with me that can help answer those questions better than I have. I guess I'd like to, I was thinking we could start by going through different elements of the Wetland Protection Act and the bylaw relative to these interests, if that would be helpful to the commission. I don't know if you want me to go through anything else before we do that.
I would.
Okay.
Do you have a presentation, or?
Sure. Would you like me to present the project once again?
Kind of do a little summary first, yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, the Merrill Ponds Wildlife Management Area is a Commonwealth of Massachusetts wildlife management area in Sutton. It consists of 7 ponds in a series, from downstream to upstream: Welsh Pond, Putnam Pond, and then Schoolhouse Pond, Adams Pond, Arnold Pond, Town Farm Pond on the other side of West Sutton Road, and Thompson Pond. And all of the dams are in bad shape. They were constructed at different times, some for cranberry operations in the 1800s, grist mill before then, and then they were all sort of combined into warm water fish hatchery that Mass Wildlife operated from the 1920s through the 1960s, I believe. Since then, the dams have deteriorated. Putnam Pond no longer holds an impoundment much of the year, although it has been more so in recent years. Welsh Pond is an impoundment currently along West Sutton Road. The water level was reduced in the 70s and it stayed in the low state for a while, and it's been higher for the last 10 or 15 years. And the state has received dam safety orders to address public safety issues at many of these impoundments, many of these dams through the wildlife management area. There is a dam safety order now requiring the Mass Wildlife repair or remove Welsh Pond Dam. There's one requiring that for Putnam Pond Dam. There was one for Adams Pond Dam, but we did some interim repairs in 2014 that addressed that dam safety order at that time. There was also one for Town Farm Pond Dam, which has been addressed through repairs in 2014, 2015. But looking at all these assets, the state said, some of these are used for recreation, some are not. So came up with a program to remove some of the dams that didn't provide as good of a recreational resource value for residents, while keeping some of the impoundments that provided better resources. So the plan, long-term plan, is to remove Welsh Pond Dam, Putnam Pond Dam, Schoolhouse Pond Dam, and Arnold Pond Dam, and maintain Adams Pond Dam and Town Farm Pond Dam as impoundments that would be available for the public. So this first notice of intent is to address the first piece of that project. So it would be to remove Welsh Pond Dam by essentially lowering the pond level from where it is now down to what would be a 4-acre or so pond of a maximum depth of 1 to 2 feet, so it would become a marsh eventually. To do that, there would be a new culvert installed below West Sutton Road at the current location of the dam's stone spillway and outlet structure. And then, then also install a new culvert at the inlet to Welsh Pond to keep flow going into the former impoundment across West Sutton Road, through the impoundment and then back out again. As mitigation for doing this work, Mass Wildlife has designed a few things and also already implemented a few things. This project, and actually the overall project, we've looked at the whole thing as a whole, sort of from the beginning. The overall project increases downstream storm flows at 103 West Sutton Road, which is a private driveway culvert, slightly for small storms. So we're just about complete with construction of higher flow bypass culvert through that driveway that mitigates those impacts for that landowner. And then other elements that we've included in the design to reflect other concerns that we've gotten from different entities in town include really reducing the size of the culverts that we'd be constructing. Number one, so the stream crossing standards that we follow in Massachusetts would dictate more of a bridge of 18 or 20 feet in width at the location where we're replacing culverts with an open bottom that allows free-flowing stream through the road. We propose not to do that. We're proposing smaller culverts that will maintain that small impoundment. It'll also allow the former impoundment to fill up during storms. That will spread the flow out over that floodplain area that will be established around the 2-acre pond, the 4-acre pond that will remain. That will help keep the sediment that is in the pond now in place, rather than just allowing it to flow downstream, which would be common practice for dam removals in the Commonwealth now. And it will also allow the wetland vegetation that establishes there to help address different nutrients and sediment that would otherwise make their way down into Lake Singletary. Another benefit of lowering the pond level is that bypass flows that now flow down West Sutton Road in a ditch directly to Lake Singletary, and those occur during storms and also during the spring freshet runoff period. Much more of that flow will pass through Welsh Pond and then back out again, rather than working its way down West Sutton Road. So that means that a greater proportion of Lake Singletary's annual water budget will be treated within the wetlands that will remain within Welsh Pond. So I think that's kind of Welsh Pond in a nutshell. Other elements of the project include Putnam Pond Dam. That embankment is in really bad shape. There's sinkholes that have formed on the roadway. The pond has not maintained much of an impoundment in a long time. When I was out last week, the water level was down low, and it was just a stream flowing through the bottom. Within the last few years, the water level's been at a higher level for longer throughout the year. We think something has probably collapsed beneath the road and blocked up the outlet that was maintaining the pond drained more of the year. So right now, flow passes through about like a 120-foot long passage through the road, and then daylights well downstream of the dam by the natural gas pipelines that are right there. What we're proposing to do is daylight 90 feet of that in a channel with step pools to help control flows as they come in elevation from the dam down to where the pipeline is, and then replace the culvert through the embankment with a larger culvert. And there's another stone box culvert further to the east, and we would abandon that by basically filling it with concrete and then establishing slopes for the roadway embankment on either side. So that way we have new infrastructure. Right now at the higher flow culvert to the east, the head wall on one side of the road is collapsing. It's kind of sketchy. It doesn't provide any shoulder or anything for walking. When a car is going by, and when I'm out there, I see people running and cycling a lot. It's kind of a hairy situation. And then as another measure to address some of the changes that will occur in flows as a result of these projects, the Tennessee gas pipelines that pass between the two dams, Welsh Pond and Putnam Pond, will be protected with submar mats, which are articulated concrete block mats that lay down on top of the substrate and protect that pipeline corridor from the increased velocity that will be coming out of the Putnam Pond culvert. And in addition, a stone check dam will be constructed across Inventory Brook just downstream of those mats, so that if there's a little bit of head cutting that comes up from Welsh Pond, it just will get interrupted at that location. It won't propagate any further back towards the pipeline corridor. So that's basically what we're applying for right now as part of this project. We've met with the Lake Singletary Association a bunch of times, talked through what we're proposing. Some members are on board, some members may not be as on board, but we've done our best to address their concerns as much as we can. We have heard a lot of what the town has to say, and we're really trying to balance a lot of different interests here. Our motivation for doing this work is public safety. It is not such a good situation that we have out there right now. We've got sinkholes in roadways, voids in roadways that could collapse and allow a car to fall in. We have driveway downstream. We have Lake Singletary right downstream. So if any of these dams fail, there would be a huge slug of sediment and debris that would go down into that lake. They're kind of like a time bomb in a way, and funds being what they are, we are trying to use the state's limited resources to do this project in a more cost-effective way than by basically restoring or repairing all these dams to what they would have been. And another motivation that we have to the wildlife habitat benefits of dam removals. There have been a bunch of dam removals across the state, and they result in a much greater diversity of plants and animals in those areas that are impacted by these removals. And instead of going from a few isolated warm water habitats, now we're looking to go to healthier ecosystems that provide greater diversity throughout the wildlife management area. So public safety is important, but also ecological diversity is important, ecological improvements. And in addition, we care about the aesthetics of things, and we also care about recreational opportunities. So that's why we are leaving, we're leaving Adams Pond. We'll be reconstructing it eventually, and we're leaving Town Farm Pond for the enjoyment of residents and the public. And when it comes to aesthetics, we think that wetlands look very nice, and hopefully we can, try to convey that a little bit more as some of the different people that we have here today get into the discussion. So I guess those are my opening remarks.
Okay, Brandon?
Okay, eventually, if you look right behind you, I want to go through all of the public interests, and if only for the benefit of the public, so to make sure that we go through each one of these aspects, and you gave a good synopsis there, but I eventually would like to hear, I think it'd be valuable to go through each one of the public interests under not only the act, but under the bylaw, and how you feel this project will protect those public interests. But before we do, I want to mention what sounds like a bit of a change in strategy. When you came in May, I remember specifically asking the purpose of this project, and your answer was that this was a stream continuity project. And I asked you if there were public safety components of it, and I don't think I really got, that was the answer, was more stream continuity. In the interim between that meeting and this meeting, there was a letter sent, I believe, from the Office of Dam Safety regarding the structure of dam structures as not being very good. And I just heard you speak about poor shape of the dams, so is there now a public safety component associated with this project?
I mean, there's always been a public safety component to the project. I guess I thought I talked about that last time, but maybe it didn't come across strongly enough. But it is important that something is done to address the situation that's out there. So that's always been an element of Mass Wildlife's, especially prioritization of work. The agency owns somewhere in it's like 33 jurisdictional dams, and I could be wrong on that number. I think the total number of dams that they own is 39, and some of them are non-jurisdictional. They have different hazard classes, and they're in different conditions. And now that there is some funding to address the dams that the agency owns, we are going to the ones that are the biggest problems from a public safety perspective to take care of them before somebody gets hurt. And so we're excited about the ecological opportunities that this project provides, but the underlying motivation to do something is public safety. If there wasn't a risk to the public, if the dam could just exist as it is, without the potential for adverse consequences, especially to people's lives and safety, then I'm sure there's other things that the state would rather be doing with its money.
There was a presentation that you did before any of this came to any boards for the town, and I think we had a site visit out there, and it was a very, very cold, extremely windy day. And so we went to all the dams, and you pointed those things out. So I think that was, way back, a public safety thing. And I remember them talking how actually West Sutton Road is the dam across there, isn't it?
That's right. As it stands right now, when the water level comes up in Welsh Pond, the entire length, it's like 1,000 feet of West Sutton Road, ends up holding water to some extent or another. So it's really hard to go out in the field and say, this is where the dam starts and this is where it ends. And really any portion of that, could be impacted to some extent or another by a high water event. And as it is now, with water flowing down the ditch on its east side, sort of in a constant state of erosion over in that tow area. So, if the water comes up and if there's some kind of, preferential flow path or void through the road that normally wouldn't be a problem, water could start heading through one side and the other, and then, you could have a sinkhole anywhere along that section. Somebody's car drives into it, then, that's the kind of thing that we get concerned about.
And there is a sinkhole on Hutchinson Road.
That's right, yep, exactly. The town repaired it a year and a half ago or so. I was out last week with Todd Olianic, who's the new district manager in the Central District, and it looks like that has settled quite a bit. The asphalt is cracked around it. So we definitely, if we had our druthers, we would take care of Putnam Pond Dam first because of all that going on, because the pipeline's right there. But to approach that and do the construction that we need to do there, it would instantaneously increase flow at Welsh Pond during storms, and Welsh Pond just cannot take that. So we have to do these projects in order, downstream to upstream. So, from a public safety perspective, Putnam is really our focus, but we have to do them sequentially.
Can you point out that, you say how 1,000-foot long section or something like that?
Yeah,
Or about
it's essentially that whole section.
right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, we've looked at, as part of the alternatives analysis that we did through the NEPA process, we've looked at an alternative that would include rehabilitation of the dam instead of removal. We've talked about that a little bit at previous meetings. We found a way where we could sort of redesign things to keep the dam limited to over here, which would reduce the impacts and the cost of the overall project, but it still would be an inexpensive project. So right here is the outlet structure of Welsh Pond. There's an inflow culvert over here, and then bypass flows head under this driveway, down the ditch, and then the two sources of water join down here, and then go through the 103 West Sutton Road culvert and down to Lake Cemetery.
All set?
Mhm.
Okay. So, under the Wetlands Protection Act, this board is charged with making sure that the public interests are protected, and they're laid out in the act, and there are 8 of them, and they're in the bullets that you see up on the screen. The only one that's, this commission takes off the board is this one right here. So we can presume there are no shellfish. But as for the rest of them, there's a presumption by this commission that the other 7 are significant, and that the applicant has the burden of proving to the commission to their satisfaction that each one of these points is going to be adequately protected. So I was wondering if you could, Dan, along with your team, as you need, could you please go through each one of these bullet points and explain to the commission your opinion on how your project is not going to adversely impact any of these? Can you do that?
Yes.
All right.
So, in terms of protection of public and private water supply, and also protection of groundwater supply, what we're doing out there is not gonna have a significant change at all on groundwater levels. There'll still be an open water area in Welsh Pond that will allow infiltration of water to recharge the groundwater supply. There's no public water supply wells in that area. In terms of flood control, what we're doing will actually provide greater flood control by providing more storage volume within Welsh Pond than currently exists now. So by letting the water level down, we now have a volume that we can fill up when a storm comes. So the compromise that we've made on the culvert sizing for the fish passage standards will actually help in terms of that by reducing downstream flows for large storms, 100-year storm, 50-year storm, and greater, probably not much greater than 100-year storm, but, and then where we did see, where we will see an increase, a small increase in flows for small storms as a result of the dam removal, we've mitigated that by providing that new culvert below 103 West Sutton Road. This will also really improve the town's resiliency, at least in this area, against future issues related to storm damage. If the capacity of the dams now are undersized, so if a storm comes along, fills up the impoundment, there's a good chance that the embankments could be damaged further, they could ultimately fail, and the town is left without access either along Hutchinson Road or along West Sutton Road. So this will really improve the town's transportation network and, make things so that we really don't have to worry about it as much for when those large storms come along. In terms of prevention of pollution, now we're gonna have that increased proportion of the Singletary Brook flow passes into Welsh Pond and then has the opportunity to be treated by the wetlands that will remain there, rather than skimming by in the ditch along West Sutton Road. And to address concerns that have come up about phosphorus, the sediment that's accumulated in Welsh Pond is gonna stay there. That's gonna be accomplished by maintaining that shallow pool as well. So there shouldn't be any increase in pollution as a result of this project. There's gonna be no new storm drainage or anything like that. No point source discharges. In terms of protection of fisheries, I guess that might make sense to talk to a fisheries guy a little bit. Do you want to, or Mike, do you want to say a few words about that topic?
Would you like me to do that for the fisheries?
I'll defer to Bobby for fisheries.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Todd Richards. I run the freshwater fisheries program for the state. I've been involved with this project for probably a shorter period of time than these folks, but my goal here is twofold. To talk a little bit about sediment erosion, protection of Singletary Lake as a fantastic recreational resource, but then also in terms of freshwater fisheries. So this dam removal here as proposed is going to have a really significant impact on the fisheries as a whole in the area. I live in the area myself. It takes me 5 minutes to get here from my house, and I've fished any number of about 15 different ponds in the area. We have a great pile of warm water resources here. There's actually some very cool trout streams too. We have a lot of data on that at the office. If anybody wants to chase wild trout, we've got some in the area as well. So in terms of protection of fisheries, we have lots of warm water resources because of the amazingly large number of dams that are now requiring everybody to spend lots of money on maintenance or removal. We probably have an awful lot more warm water habitat than we certainly did way back. So we've got lots of warm water fisheries in terms of yellow perch, white perch, large and smallmouth bass, chain pickerel. We've got very robust fisheries. The impacts of this project on the fisheries of this area is not going to be a significant impact. It's not to take away from the folks who like to fish this one spot. Everybody's got their favorite spot. Very understandable. I have my own favorite spots. But we do have lots of alternatives in the area to go and drop a line and catch an awful lot of warm water fish. We've got some very healthy fisheries in the area.
Thanks, Todd. And then protection of wildlife habitat. We have Chris Pulo here. Yeah, I'm looking right over you. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Could you spell your last name, Chris?
Sure. B-U-E-L-O-W. So Chris Buelow, Senior Restoration Ecologist from the Massachusetts Natural Heritage Program. And when I think about a project like this, I think about change, looking at what you have compared to what you could have, what this dam will actually impact. This potential dam removal could impact in the future. So as Todd says, warm water basin, fairly common, both regionally and within this watershed. When I think about wildlife resources that could result from these changes, I think about things that go from a very stable environment, which is what you have now, which is not always a good thing, changing into a much more natural, much more dynamic system. So just very briefly, how I would see a project like this play out on the landscape is just a sequence of successional features on that landscape. Moving from the very initial stages of this, some mud flats early on, some interstitial pools of water, getting that natural stream flowage back in, but over time, in really pretty quick amounts of time, those mud flats are going to turn back into graminoid emergent marshes, really from the seed bank that's in that mud that's there now, and then from your native shrubs coming in from the edges, and eventually going into a system that I would predict to be run by shrub marsh with graminoid or cattail marsh in the middle with the flowing stream, which, comparing that to the situation that you have now, much more diversity and the potential for a much more dynamic system. And then on top of that, with that dam being removed, you do have the potential for beaver to come in and getting that beaver cycle started. So instead of having this one static system flowing, you would over time have these different communities pulsing through. So your bird populations are shifting over time, your invertebrates, and the other way to maybe look at this is, net gains, net losses. So the species that are using this community right now are really, I would consider to be generalist species, species that probably are going to, on some level, stay in the system. But with these changes, you're going to be attracting much more specialized species to that system. So your biodiversity, I would predict, would increase by a lot. So that's my thoughts in a nutshell. I'm happy to talk much more about this if there's questions.
So I should point out that the Notice of Intent has a wildlife habitat evaluation in it, and Steve here is the guy whose name is on it. Steve and Chris worked together to develop that. So, if you had specific questions about the site, we can address those too.
I have a question and comment. Maybe.
Sure.
I got just a question and comment before we move on. What is the comment is in regards to the warm water fisheries. There is ample fisheries in the area, I don't disagree. It's the access to these fisheries which is difficult at times. Take Singletary Lake, for instance, there's very little access to that lake for anybody that wants to go fishing unless they got a boat to put in the lake and so forth. So you can't just stop and wait from home from work and throw a line in, which you can and people do frequently at Welsh Pond and the other ponds down the road. In the summertime, you can't go down the road, even though there's not adequate parking, but you can't go down the road without seeing 2 or 3 cars, and I'm not gonna exaggerate and say a dozen, but 2 or 3 cars any night with people down there enjoying the fishery, which, you know, you won't necessarily have when you got a marsh. Now, my question, I guess, is you are now describing to me that you are going to have a dam at Welsh Pond as well.
No, so.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a smaller pipe, we're talking about flood control, we're talking about a major storm event suddenly rushing into that area with an 18-inch pipe going out, in that area filling up to the floodplain, or filling up to some point. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that's a dam. Anything that's holding back water to protect the downstream is considered a dam. So I guess what we're talking about here is improving that portion or a portion of Welsh Pond embankment as a dam to put the 18-inch pipe through. Otherwise, if the dam is not safe now, to put a whole bunch of water behind it very quickly doesn't sound like a prudent idea if the integrity of the dam is not there to begin with.
It will behave no differently than any other roadway culvert that's out there. So we basically have designed it following Mass DOT's culvert design guidelines and sizing guidelines. So its size, we have it in here, is
But can we have both? Can we have a culvert under a highway as well as claiming that this is going to equalize the water flowing to Singletary and protect Singletary from a flash flood and everything else? I don't know if we can have it both ways.
I mean, all culverts retain water to some extent, the way that they've been historically designed.
Most culverts that I've been associated with have been designed so that it doesn't retain water, the water goes through it.
Yeah.
Most roadway culverts, I'm sure the culvert you're designing upstream from that is not intended to hold water back, but to allow water to pass through. And to say, most culverts that I've been experienced with are designed size-wise to make sure there is very little backup behind it. Now, this one here is being designed specifically to hold back 4-pound water.
So this will be a 6.5-foot wide, 4-foot tall culvert, and
Did I see in the drawing last time around, 18-inch culvert?
no, I don't think so. There's an existing 18-inch there. That could be what you're thinking about.
So this is not gonna, so how big is this culvert gonna be?
6.5 feet wide, 6.5 feet wide, 4 feet tall.
So something that's 6.5 feet wide but 4 feet tall, it's gonna take one hell of a lot of water before you're gonna get any condiment behind that. So it's not gonna act as a you know, equalizing force or however you
Right.
put it. To
Exactly.
protect, so it's not gonna act that way with a culvert that size.
For small storms, it lets through more water than what goes through now. For large storms, now the pond fills up, and then all of a sudden you have, a distance of the roadway that begins overtopping. There's a huge amount of flow very quickly.
I've never seen the road over top, number one. And number two is that when that dam was properly maintained 10 years ago, even the water running down that ditch was infrequent at all. But this has happened in the past 10 years primarily, and I'm not saying the water's not running, but it's happening because nobody's done anything to repair that dam in 30 years. And it's fallen into disrepair, and as such, the overflow is crumbled in, it's almost non-existent. They breached the stone portion of the dam down the Millbury side of it to allow for some overflow. I mean, it's not functioning, I mean, so we can't really look at it as it is today and think that that's the way it's supposed to function to begin with. But with the big culvert, it will not retain any water.
Not
In
usually.
practical standpoints, or,
Right, we're talking 1,500-year storms. and things
well,
like
we're
that.
talking much more than that, because I think, so even the 4 inches of rain we got in an hour and a half yesterday, wouldn't even be a drop in the bucket if you were
Like, the water
a
level
4
would
foot by
come up.
6 foot wide culvert.
For a storm of that size, the water level would come up some, when it starts spreading out.
Not much, but okay. All right. So it's not gonna really be an impoundment afterwards, it's not gonna hold back any water, water's gonna flow right straight to Singleton.
There's a.
For all
there's-
intents and purposes, 99 out of 100 times that we get a rain event, right?
There is a low area in the pond bottom now that will be below the inlet elevation of the
Correct.
culvert. So that'll be a 4-acre
Two-
impounded area.
1 to 2 feet deep until such time as it mucks up and becomes a swamp, at which time the impoundment disappears to a large extent, other than the fact it becomes a
Yep.
medium that soaks up water in the event you get water.
Yep, as things evolve.
All right, so
Yep.
I guess the big thing is that it will not, this design will not further any protection necessarily for Singletary as far as a large slug of water going down there at one time.
I mean, it does reduce flows for small storms, and, you know, that's a fact. It doesn't make the dam any worse off than it is now during large flows. It protects the road better than what's there now, and it also protects the 103 West Sutton Road driveway infrastructure than it does now.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Have you, Dale?
Wait.
State your name.
Yeah, wait till they're through the
Okay.
presentation.
I'm ready again.
Okay.
If you're ready. Okay. So we just talked about the public interest under the Wetlands Protection Act. But there are additional public interests under the Sutton Wetland Protection Bylaw that aren't necessarily covered under the Wetlands Protection Act. There are 4 of them. And they're shown right here. So where it says current. The first one and the last one, I think we can take off the board. The aquatic life habitat is similar to the fisheries habitat, and we know that, there's gonna be a lot less water, but that's the point. And, Mr. Richards did speak to that, unless the board has any concerns. Okay. It's not an agricultural project, so we can take that off the board. So, Mr. Teff already alluded to one of the other 2, which is recreational activities and aesthetics. So, these ponds obviously have a large recreational aspect to them. And I think the board would like you to speak on both, but particularly your opinions about how, the recreational values of this area will not be adversely impacted. Can you speak to that?
So, I was out here last Thursday with Todd, driving around. We saw during that trip, there were 6 cars at the Lake Singletary boat ramp. There were 2 people out at Adams Pond Dam fishing, and there was nobody at Welsh Pond Dam.
What time was
during
it?
That period. This was midday, you know,
So
10.
people
11
still at
o'clock.
work?
Yeah, so, you know, the people that are, you know, have the day off, you know, are out having a good time, are going to the resources that are better, than others. It seems to me that I've probably been at Welsh Pond, I don't know, 2 dozen times, and I've seen people there maybe 2 or 3 times out of those fishing. Granted, I'm not usually there in the evening or the early morning, but, you know, where there's a lot of, you know, fishing pressure and that kind of thing. But to me, it seems like people are going to the better resources when better resources are free, and that Welsh Pond, you know, may be like a backup alternative try this spot, because, you know, there's somebody over there or whatever. The fact of the matter is, though, there's an awful lot of resources that are available in the area. And one of the things that we want to do as part of these projects, once we get to Adams Pond Dam, is to improve access to that impoundment. So that'll be maintained as an impoundment, and the idea is to allow access over the dike that you get to, and allow some parking in the area that separates the dam from the dike. So it's not just a pull-off that holds 1 or 2 cars, but, you know, maybe it can hold the additional vehicles that, you know, that are lost at Welsh. That's sort of a long-term thing, that we're not talking about that really in this application. But, you know, in general, there's just an awful lot of resources around, and, you know, this one place, you know, it just does not provide as good a recreational opportunity as those other ones. In addition, it's rather dangerous. There's not a lot of pull-off space there. It is difficult to get out of your car. You have to really look. And, you know, I don't think it's a place where the Commonwealth want to encourage people to really go because of that danger. So I guess that's my reflection on that item. Is if anybody else wants to say something.
Were you thinking of any sort of mitigation?
For what?
For doing, like, when they did the one up by the town farm, they got rid of the Phragmites in Putnam
Well,
Pond.
you know, I'm glad you brought that up, Madam Chair. The question I have, the water levels are gonna be down, we're gonna have a lot more emergent vegetation, shallow pools, which concerns me, in regards to, population by invasive species, particularly Phragmites and purple loosestrife are two that come right off the top of my head. What are your plans, if any, to make sure that those particular kinds of plants are controlled?
Just to start out briefly, so right now at Welsh Pond, there are not a lot of invasives around the pond, as I understand it. There's some bittersweet and things along West Sutton Road, but, and maybe some other things too. That is about the extent of it. Our plan is to treat those before the dam removal occurs. And then, you know, not only for this process, but also for all the other permits that you have to get Army Corps of Engineers specifically, we've prepared a restoration plan that is included in the notice of intent, that includes formal monitoring of the exposed pond area for 2 years after the dam removal occurs, with removal of invasive species during that time, followed by informal monitoring for 3 years. So there wouldn't necessarily be reporting, but, you know, we'd still be putting our eyes on it, looking for invasive species, and then addressing them. But then after that, you know, Mass Wildlife is an agency that is interested in keeping these communities healthy. So, you know, the Commonwealth, you know, wants to have a long-term commitment to really making this a successful ecosystem. So that is the plan as far as I know. If anyone want to expand on it at all?
Well, I'll just say that, so as a restoration ecologist, this is something that I think of and actually deal with all the time, and I can think of a project like this, we're actually at the right time to be thinking about this. So these invasives are gonna be pioneering during the disturbance and during this period of disturbance. So we look at this in terms of early detection, rapid response. So as you mentioned, we're gonna be here early on through the process and throughout the process. And so we'll be able to deal with these things as they start to get into the system. So that's the easiest time, that's the most effective time to treat this, and that's the time to stay ahead of it. In terms of purple loosestrife, we actually have documented that the biocontrol is on site now. It's kind of in the environment across the state, controlling loosestrife naturally. So that's one that we would obviously be monitoring, but we're already having impacts from the biocontrol locally.
When Putnam Pond was first drained, it was the most beautiful invasive species of purple loosestrife.
Yeah.
And of course, now succession has happened and it's disappeared.
Mhm.
But there were all the cattails in the pond. And so the mitigation that I kind of lobbied for Town Farm Pond was to get rid of that Phragmites there. So at first it was just a little patch, and then 3 years later it was, so I'm glad to see it standing there dead as.
Yeah, that's right. So we have been treating that, and as you say, if the earlier you get to it, the easier it is.
And that's another thing too, where your involvement long-term in the community and seeing these places and knowing your district manager to, give them a hard time about, where the invasives are so that they can come out and do something about it is important, the long-term, once the formal monitoring for this project is finished.
So there is a plan to take care of invasives.
Maybe we can get more detail later.
Specifically, that plan is included in Appendix J, the notice of intent. And it also includes measures that will be required of the contractor to minimize potential for bringing invasive material in on the equipment as well.
Right.
Speaking of which, there are a few shellfish probably, but freshwater ones, not commercially harvested ones.
Well, I just wanted to go back real quick. You had mentioned it's a public safety issue about the vehicles parking on the side of the road, you thought wasn't safe. All along West Sutton Road, all along this chain of ponds, you'll see yellow dashes in the roadway. That's the stop for the fire truck. That's where the fire truck stops and sucks the water out to put a house fire out, a forest fire. What is the state gonna do to fix that when these ponds are mucked up?
The state's been in discussion, the district with the fire department about putting in a dry hydrant out of Adams Pond.
So we're gonna go from 15 different places to load up a tanker to one?
I mean,
They have Manchog and everything too, right?
yeah. I mean, it's,
I mean,
No,
yeah,
but-
if you're driving a tanker back and forth to Manchog, there's
No.
nowhere along that stretch of Lake Singletary that you can gain access with a pumper to suck water out until you get to the boat ramp.
Yeah.
So you're probably talking 500 to 700 homes, I would think, that are gonna suffer from lack of water. I think that's a much bigger public safety issue than having a couple cars parked on the side of West Sutton Road fishing.
So does the tanker currently not stop at any of the existing other ponds in the Merrill Pond system?
No, they do, that's what I'm talking about, but you're
Okay.
gonna be draining out all except for one, right?
there's
I've
two
never seen
Or
one.
two.
They're all within,
One of them's not accessible
Right.
by anybody,
so you have
And so you
one
get-
versus 2 in a 3-mile stretch,
but the one,
right?
the one that's on Singletary Avenue is not accessible for a
Right.
pump truck right now. The
So
one
not
at
counting that one.
Schoolhouse Road is the one that they use quite often, and
Mhm.
Welch Pond is the other one they use quite often.
Right, so you're losing one of the 2 in that 3-mile
Losing
stretch.
two,
Two,
You're
right,
going from 2 down to 1
Right.
in that 3-mile stretch.
right.
Yep.
Where's the one?
We're going down to, what do you mean?
No,
We're going, which dam is staying? Arnold,
Adams Pond.
Adams Pond Dam.
Yeah.
So that'll be the one that's left.
Yep.
Yeah, but there's no access to get a pump truck in there. They use Schoolhouse Pond and Welch Pond are the two that got an access.
So that's zero.
Yeah.
But as stated, it's a big, that's an issue.
That's why the district has been discussing adding a dry hydrant to Adams Pond.
What is a dry hydrant?
It's a kind of a standpipe on the side of the road with an intake that goes out of the pond to draw water from.
So instead of reaching directly into the pond, they have a piece of infrastructure that they can pull right up to.
And I guess, we've been talking about these projects for a while. During the MEPA process, the focus of the fire issue was Schoolhouse Pond, and Welch Pond was never brought up as a fire hydrants, as a fire water source, including from the fire department or the select board, the town administrator, until, I think the Lake Singletary Association meeting a month ago was the first time I had heard of it. So the plan all along has been to work with the access to Adams Pond, to provide that as a source of water.
That brings up an interesting question. I mean, the draw for the water for the fire department isn't exactly in the purview of the commission. However, in the spirit of coordinating with other town boards and committees and departments, is this something that should wait for, because that's a public safety issue, I would imagine, right? Is that something that has to wait for some kind of, answer, some kind of resolution with the fire department or some other department or agency before we can go forward with, closing and voting on this?
I, for one, my full-time job is in the insurance industry, and recently, 2-3 years, Sutton protection class changed, or parts of it changed, because of, in lieu of some of the ponds. So that's helped people reduce cost of insurance, and it does help if you can get water. I wanna be assured from everyone here, whether you get it tonight or in the future, that if that does change, that the protection class does not go negative to the homeowners in the town, because it would be more cost and less insurance companies. And I know you're looking at me like, what the heck is he talking about? What we mean is it's less adequate for people to get water, as Andy and Bob were saying. So I would like to be assured that there's still a water source for all those houses in that area. And make sure the fire chief and everyone in the state is agreeing that we're not losing our water for a fire. To me, that's a safety concern.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
I don't know if it's a conservation thing, but
Well, it is and it isn't. It technically isn't, in my opinion, but at the same time, it's something that can you condition a project to drain it if this is a known and used water withdrawal for the fire department. The fire department is somehow gonna, I don't get angry or stop it in its tracks because the commission cannot do this because public safety comes first. That's a good
well,
legal
conservation would
question.
never tell the fire department they can't go suck water out if someone's house is burning down.
I
So
agree.
if that pond is gone, or relatively gone, and there's a fire, where does the water come from?
Yeah,
And
that's-
so if that one intake, which makes sense, if that can be proved that that's adequate, then
Yeah,
fine. I think it needs more than one, but
Right,
Who-
we
who would
all
pay for
know
that?
that public safety trumps any
Yeah.
conservation concern. So this is kind of a different kind of
in
situation.
fact, this is a conservation issue because it came up recently in a meeting with a pond on something other related, that where's the fire source for a new development? I'm sorry, it came up through planning and conservation, where's the fire source? And a local pond was to be listed as the fire source. So I do think that this needs to be researched.
Yes,
If I could provide some information, this is not a new concept. Yoakum Brook Dam removal in Beckett, the same solution was proposed to have a standpipe and an available source of water when a dam removal came up of a small brook. So maybe it would be helpful to be able, for us to provide you the contacts in Beckett to see how they worked through the issue and made sure that the fire department, Conservation Commission, everybody was on the same page. It's just an example of one where it's been used before. So you have to make sure that your distance to service doesn't change the insurance rates on the houses within that REIT. That's what you're.
Well, but I don't think, not to be disrespectful, I don't think it's our job to determine if what you're gonna do is gonna work. I want some proof from someone personally that that's gonna do.
I would imagine they would have had to do the same thing though, right? They wouldn't, so that's all I'm saying is providing a contact so you can see if they looked into insurance rates there and what surety
Well, I think
they
this-
got.
those are all set by ISO.
So now
so-
we're getting somewhere, so we've got a process.
So someone has to say that this is adequate.
Right.
like the fire
And
chief.
hopefully they did
I-
that,
I-
and didn't put their people at risk either.
Yeah, just a thought, because there's a lot of people that, Sutton's a big town, and there's only hydrants in, 5% of it.
And just to make sure I understand the math still, because apparently I can't count to two. You had Adams and Welch, but Adams is not accessible, can't get a truck to it, so you had Welch, right? And so now hopefully the district is in negotiation with the fire department to make sure that there is adequate supply at Welch, so you went from 1 to 1. is hopefully, if they design it right.
Well, there might be
the way they're
supply
doing
at Welsh off the bat, but eventually that's gonna, I mean, once the weeds take over, they're probably gonna clog that pipe right up,
Not
won't
in
they?
standpipe. I think it's a different process.
I don't know
won't
how
speak
it
to that.
works, but-
Yeah, yep.
And who's gonna pay for the standpipe, cause we don't wanna burden the town with financial
Well, they
responsibility.
weren't talking about putting a standpipe mulch anyhow,
that?
because there's not enough water
Yeah.
there to
I,
support a standpipe.
yeah, I don't think, right, that's what I was getting at, I don't think there'd be enough water at Welsh to put a standpipe in.
We're talking about a standpipe at Adams Farm, weren't you?
Yes.
As long as it works,
Yeah.
right?
This was a while ago, but my recollection is that the town researched it, figured out what parts they would need and the cost, and that the town, the fire department was gonna cover the cost of the materials, and that the Mass Wildlife District was gonna work on the installation. And, you know, thinking of it being an issue related to this future schoolhouse pond dam removal, we were gonna permit it with the Conservation Commission too, because I imagine that is something that would also have to occur. And it would have been part of that process.
Interesting. It's a little bit of a curveball.
Yes. I think we'd like some documentation that, you know, that this would be all okay.
This is my first dam removal permitting review project, and I didn't even think about that, so I apologize. And like you said, Dan, this just came up, what, a month ago? Yeah, it wasn't mentioned in May.
No, I'd never heard of it before then.
Yeah.
The other thing that was highlighted that we were just talking about was the aesthetics.
Right, we gotta get into that. So could you take it away?
So I guess I started off, we sort of, the agency and us trying to figure out how to think about aesthetics, and one thing that came to mind was trees, because there are a fair number of trees that have to be removed to take care of the dam removal. There's several up at Putnam Pond Dam, and I'm talking public shade trees within the public right-of-way, following the town's rules, but also trees off the public right-of-way within the public or within Mass Wildlife's property. And so the total tree count removal that we're looking at for undertaking this project is 52, I believe. And that's 42 within the public right-of-way and 10 outside of the public right-of-way. But, you know, in thinking about this, we took that concept that we had come up with for dam rehabilitation a year and a half ago and looked at, and I can give the commission a copy of this, but, you know, we looked at that area around the outlet structure that would have to be cleared to construct an embankment, put in a spillway and an outlet structure, you know, and tallied the number of those trees along with some of the other elements of the work. And the total number of trees to be removed for that is 145 trees. So it's about a little more than 2.5 times the number of trees that would have to be removed to rehabilitate the dam as opposed to removing the dam. So that was one way we thought about to look at it. Another way is that with the implementation of this project, there'll be 4.5 acres of that pond bottom exposed that will eventually convert into a different kind of a wetland. It may eventually become a red maple swamp that would allow for the establishment of a much larger forest in that area. So, you know, I can give this to you for the record if that makes sense. I can give the
Now, are these total trees or are these 5-inch DBH trees?
These are, I believe these are 4-inch and larger.
4-inch and larger?
Yep.
Dan?
Yep.
Would you like me to have, pass up versus?
Sure, yeah.
And then can provide a narrative as I'm whiting it.
We also wanted to talk about, you know, other sort of aesthetic things.
So every system is different, but this is a potential proxy for what we might see at the site. Emergent marsh in the center, channel going through, obviously this channel's a little bit bigger, but you can see the pioneering red maple on the edges. Just so we can visualize what the succession of the wetland community might look like over time or at a period of time. This is in Muddy Brook Wildlife Management Area in Hardwick in central Mass.
So is this where you restored the stream, or
Nope,
remove the
this is
dam?
just an example of the community, so.
Once the dam, as Chris was talking about earlier, once the dam is removed, it's not gonna look too nice right away, but then plants move in and they vegetate out very quickly. There's a there's a established seedbed within the bottom of Welsh Pond that's all ready to spring up once it's exposed, to the air again.
Well, Putnam Pond is a little farther along in succession, so you
Yeah.
can look at that.
Yep.
So in addition to that, I've worked actually on, Chris helped me out on some invasive approaches at a dam removal project that I worked on in Sturbridge. And in that situation, the amount of dewatered area and mud flat was far more extensive than what they're expecting here. But with the proper procedures, that seed bank in that, just in the one growing season, is now greened up. I probably should have brought pictures of that too, but it's so much more extensive than what you're looking at here. We had, hundreds of feet that were exposed that are now greened up. I've seen other examples too of dam removals breaches, which is what we're trying to avoid here. But that the next growing season we're 100% jewelweed, and then as you pointed out with the other pond locally, that succession happens pretty quick.
And on that same vein, and I wish I had brought photos of this too, but I work with the Division of Ecological Restoration a lot, and they do a lot of large-scale cranberry restorations down in the southeast, 100, 200, 3-acre areas that have been in cranberry production for literally 150 years. They'll scarify the soil, rehydrate the soils, and with a year with absolutely no seeding, it's back to 100% native vegetation. So we have a lot of experience in this process, and a lot of confidence that these communities are built for this kind of disturbance, and they rebound very, very quickly.
And beauty is an eye of the beholder? Is that part of the argument?
Aesthetics are subjective, absolutely.
Yeah, and in terms of agency goals, we have established goals for restoration of certain kinds of communities. So when it comes from an agency perspective, we have lots of warm water fish communities, we have less of this available. So yeah, maybe it's a different spin on aesthetics, but in terms of agency goals, on management areas that we're trying to operate, we're trying to set that example for high quality aquatic and terrestrial communities.
In the end, the beauty will be in the eyes of the commission.
I think it was mentioned previously that Singletary Brook has trout in it. People had talked about trout fishing there.
I don't think so.
No?
They stocked Lake Singletary.
I know, but
Lake Singletary is stocked with trout. Singletary Brook itself, I don't believe we have data that says that it supports wild trout anywhere in that extent. And maybe prior, in earlier iterations when you weren't talking about having the perched culvert, and there was probably more of an advent of aspect of the connectivity, as you had mentioned earlier in the meeting. Now that culvert is supposed to be designed to try to crop those top flows, the connectivity also drops off as a little bit of a priority, which is probably why that message seemed a little bit mixed to you. But it also is less, suitable for reestablishing, say, trout populations. However, when this area gets revegetated, temperature benefits to Lake Singletary could probably be monitored as well. That's what we did on Hammett Brook, is we put in thermographs, which is actually something that I could commit to in terms of mitigation. If we wanted to see what water quality parameters change before and after, then we can actually measure and monitor that. At first, your temperature's not gonna change much. You got the same solar exposure, and you have a lot of warm water going down. But as this community that Chris is describing revegetates that area, you have more shading, you have temperature moderation, and that can do nothing but benefit Lake Singletary.
That's interesting.
It's not gonna be a world ender, but every little bit helps in terms of water quality, because we have so many different small impacts to it, whether it's roads and culverts and impoundments. So everything that we can do to try to improve that a little bit helps.
Well, it would be good to monitor post-construction, but do you have any data pre?
We can put
For
it out.
for comparison.
I could put it out. If it works into the project, then how we do things, I could have folks from Westboro put out a couple of thermographs within the next couple of weeks, so we still get the summer peak, you know, or summer high temperatures. It may not be the worst of the worst, although 2 weeks ago it would have been, because we had drought conditions and we had 90-degree plus. But we could certainly get some thermographs into their reach. We've got some other ones in the area too,
We-
Cold Spring Brook.
Yes, we did it in Cold
Yes, we
Spring
know
Brook,
about those.
yes.
In fact,
Yep.
I was there when they installed them.
Yeah, go find them now. I'll take you up there with me. It's a challenge.
I think that I've had them cover everything that I can think of. We've gone through all of the public interests under the act and the bylaw. If you're satisfied with the answers, if you don't have any more of your own, I think it's about time for the public comment.
Okay, Dale,
You brought up the question.
you gotta tell your name and your address.
Neil King,
Address?
address 2 Purgatory Road. Mr. D. Wolf brought up the question I wanted to bring up, the fire department having suction for their protection of fire.
Well, we've heard that concern. My name is Todd Atlantic. I'm the brand-new Central District Supervisor for Mass Wildlife. And we've heard that concern and understand it. And I think it would help the process. I'm wondering if the commission could consider this proposal contingent upon us working something out with the fire department at Adams to make sure that they had a withdrawal point, a dry hydrant, et cetera. That would satisfy your concerns in this issue.
Can you state name one more time, please?
I'll spell the last name
Yes,
for you.
thank
It's
you.
Olanyk.
And the first name again? Todd. Thank you, Todd.
Yep.
So, to get this straight, you're willing to somehow work out some kind of plan with the fire department for a,
Dry hydrant
Dry
withdrawal.
hydrant.
It's something that my predecessor was working on, I guess. I'm willing to do that. And hopefully that'll address your concerns here. And you can make a decision contingent upon that satisfactory resolution with them.
Any other concerns from the public?
Just to re-mention what Billy mentioned, fire department dry hydrant is a good thing. Now, will that in fact meet the insurance requirements with it to have a pond available within so many feet of a dwelling? Or how does that work? I'm not really familiar with that. and
I
know that
can't
there
answer
is
it, but I know I believe it was Chief Belcedo for years has worked very hard to get the protection class changed in Sutton, so it's more affordable and favorable for people and insurance companies. So I would be fine as long as it can be proved that whatever goes in that place does not make it worse for the citizens of the town of Sutton. So,
I agree. I mean,
Ha-
right now.
and I'm sure there's a way to do it, you know.
question is what level of surety do you want? Do you want that level of surety before an order of conditions is issued, contingent upon, as a condition? And that's where we're going to next in the discussion.
I'm not in favor, I don't think I'd be in favor of approving this unless I knew that the citizens of Sutton, and particularly that area in town, weren't gonna be
Penalized. Or
penalized.
Impacted?
impacted, yeah. Because it recently changed. I don't want to speak for, but within a few years. It's not like it's been 30 years, so.
It was last year.
Well,
I
it,
don't think
It
that's
was
something
last
you
year
can
on my
condition.
insurance rate.
Well, you could condition, the construction of the dry hydrant before any work on this is done.
That's only if the dry hydrant meets the requirements, and the fact that taking Welch Pond, just to pick on one
You-
out of the equation, may affect.
usually to get those kind of numbers, you have to have a hydrant or some kind of thing. So I don't imagine the state's going to want to run water with hydrants all the way down. I could be wrong, but I don't know where's the closest one. Millbury? I I don't think you're gonna wanna run it all this way down. To me, that'd be a heck of a lot more expensive than rebuilding the dam. But
I'm not an expert in this area, but I can't imagine a dry hydrant would be less adequate than dropping a pipe into the Welsh pond.
We don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think with
Yeah.
what little bit I know about it, and Billy knows a lot more than I do, that a lot of that's contingent on how far the fire department has to go to draw their water.
Right.
So with one dry hydrant down the road a half a mile,
Right.
how does that affect the jurisdiction around? I mean, does everything stay equal, or does it change?
Right.
That's the question I have,
So
believe.
they'd be comparing the Welsh Pond location to the new potential Adams Dry Hydrant and its volume and capability.
I mean, and it might be something you call Chief Balsito tomorrow morning, and he can answer the question. I don't know.
I'm kinda hearing that you wanna hear the answers to that before you make a decision, I think.
There's public safety aspects of that I don't think can be ignored. I mean, this, you know, to contrast, there are public safety issues with, sinkholes and, you know, the integrity of the dams, and if we don't do something about it one way or another, that poses a public safety issue. At the same time, you drain the water out of the ponds and you lose that intake, and the fire department's ability to get water in an emergency, well, that's another public safety issue that I don't think can be ignored. Now, you know, think about it, an analogy might be, you know, let's say there are hydrants on this road, and a project proposes, in order to conduct the project, you have to take the hydrants out, and all of a sudden, people do not have access to water in an emergency. There's no hydrants up this area, are there?
No.
So, get the ability to get, like the pond is a hydrant, so the ability to get water is a very important public safety aspect, which I don't think can be ignored. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that it can't be solved, but it
Yeah.
sounds like the commission is leaning towards wanting to have something pretty solidly in place to address that issue before an order of conditions can be issued. Am I right?
That's what I'm hearing.
I've got one more on this one. First a compliment, Mr. Buttrick, you've done a great job with this. I commend you. You were dealt a bad hand. I'm gonna ask this question for the third time. What is the current elevation as compared to the drained elevation of the water? What is the difference?
Okay, do we have in the notice of intent, was it the chair real quick? Sure we have it in a dozen places, just not the places I'm gonna be looking. So the elevation is about 575 feet, probably ranging from 575 to 576.
Or do you have to go back to the H&H?
Well, these are storm elevations.
So that's what the current is, there
That's-
about 575?
Yeah, that's what the current is. And proposed.
Be the inverter of your culvert, wouldn't it?
Proposed it's gonna be, roughly 570.
So it's a 5-foot differential? And I've been told from many people that it's about 2 feet higher than it always was historically.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, why can't we set that elevation at 572 or 573? And I think that would satisfy all of the complaints that I've heard from everybody, including my own, fire department complaints. The bank is sloped enough on West Sutton, walking on it, I don't think that whole West Sutton stretch would be an earthen dam all the time, possibly in a flood situation.
I mean, so to get the 570 elevation, we're using a low area in the middle of the pond that's at that elevation, so we can basically set the culvert where the embankment of the road dips down and then hits a more natural grade and then drops down towards those low areas. So we don't have to build this project, we don't have to build a culvert like it was a dam. It doesn't have to have super watertight joints, it doesn't have to have seepage cutoff. We can do it precast, so that means less of a disruption to traffic flow during construction. So even with this arrangement, in order to call it a non-jurisdictional dam, the impoundment needs to be less than 6 feet deep or 50 acre-feet in volume during a 100-year storm, 15 acre-feet in volume during a 100-year storm. We're slightly exceeding that. This will be 6.7 feet deep during a 100-year storm. But the dam safety regulations in them contain a definition of a culvert, which is basically a structure that passes flow and does not maintain an impoundment under normal conditions because it's constructed at the toe of the roadway embankment, essentially. To maintain that ponded level, even of a couple feet, if we built it like we are building this, then we would probably have problems with joint leakage in the precast culvert sections and with flow through the soil along the interface of the culvert and the soil below it. So we need to start talking about cast-in-place construction. We need to start talking about doing concrete cutoff walls that extend backwards into the soil and below the culvert, so that water has to go a lot further to follow that preferential flow path along the culvert. And in order to do cast-in-place work here, it would add a huge amount of cost, and it would also probably require closure of that section of the road for an extended period of time. I'm not sure how that would happen without doing that. And then we also have a dam. We would, instead of just sending the Office of Dam Safety a dam safety permit application and say, we're taking this dam out and putting a culvert, and then we have to do, different level of design calculations, a different level of design review, then it's jurisdictional afterwards, then it needs to be inspected, it needs to be mowed and maintained and all those kinds of things. It was our intention to address as many of the local concerns as we could with allowing that low area in the former impoundment bottom to be ponded without the outlet structure for the culvert doing that actual work, so that it's a simpler project, so that the design level is less. And that's just speaking from an engineering perspective. And the habitat conditions in the former impoundment would be different as well. And it's just would be a smaller fringe around the edges that would undergo the changes to ecological conditions that Chris was talking about. So that's our thought process behind that.
Basically, it's financial responsibility.
That is a part of it, but it's also the ecological goals of the project. And then we would still have a jurisdictional plan, exactly. So we'd be talking about, thank you, Todd, we'd be talking
Continue.
about the 145 tree
Continue.
impacts versus, the 4250 that we're looking at.
So I guess we have to decide whether you want to continue or you want to
Well,
condition it.
regarding that, it doesn't sound to me like you wanna condition it until you get some kind of, something on paper that the dry hydrant can be constructed at Adams Pond, which will require another notice of intent. So, perhaps you want them to follow through with that application before this application can be finalized in one way or another. And I hear other issues, like Andy was talking about, whether or not you wanna condition a certain elevation or at all. What your opinions are on recreational impacts, the whole gamut. But it's not, regardless of those things, I think one thing that sounds definite is that you want a surety about this dry hydrant. I think everybody's on board with that, right?
And I think if that got over to Wanda, we could view it by email, so you don't have to come in here for another hour and a half, hopefully.
Well, I would think they would have to, unless you're gonna condition it on that.
No, they'd have to come in, but hopefully it would be pretty
Yeah.
cut and dry.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
if we
that-
have something,
It would have to be a notice of intent because it's a direct alteration of, work in a resource area. But I think if you work it out with the fire department and get some kind of plan together for a dry hydrant that's to everyone's satisfaction, especially the fire department is a big part of this, I think.
And surety that it's not gonna change the insurance values.
and
I
that's,
don't know how much Conservation Commission can really,
Well,
make a decision based on insurance rates, that's really
well,
not.
that's true, but.
it wouldn't be insurance rates, but if it changes the protection class of that area, that is detrimental.
It's public
It's
interest.
public interest. Take the price out of it, just the headache of it.
If the elevation was higher than 570, we could probably pass it through tonight, because I don't think it wouldn't dry up enough to affect the water draw
There'd
for
be
the
no
fire department.
NOI for the,
There would be no other notice of intent?
If we did that, we'd have to redo NEPA and a bunch of other stuff. You wouldn't be seeing us for a year at least, probably.
That would make a lot of people happy for a year.
And it sounds like we go on the dry hydrant route. And was it the safety of the class, what is it called?
well, it's through ISO, which is, I just want something from Chief Belcito or someone that says it's not gonna affect all the work he and the town has already done. And I don't think anyone in the town wants that to change. And it probably won't, but
I guess I would ask that we continue to the next meeting. We can look into these issues.
it's 2 weeks should be enough to get that result, right?
Yeah, we'll start with that and see where we are. see
Yeah,
how
I would
people's
recommend,
vacation schedules go. Yeah.
sitting down with the fire chief, just right away as fast as you can and see what can be done and come back in 2 weeks. I don't think we have to talk about this whole thing again.
What date is that?
Wanda, your calendar's up.
Next meeting is August 1st
Make a
August
motion to
1st.
continue to August 1st at
at 7:30.
7:30.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Just a general question, what's your tentative construction schedule?
Intended construction time frame?
Yeah, what year?
It would be this, 2019, so it'd be starting in spring.
Okay, just curious, you didn't mention that, that's just
Yep.
curious.
Depends on how permitting goes.
No, I understand that, that's what I say right now.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Dream team tonight.
RDA needs to be read in.
Okay, the next on the agenda is a public hearing of a new RDA for 19.5 West Sutton Road. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018, and it's now 8:25 PM at Sutton Town Hall, 4 Oxford Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a request for determination of applicability submitted to the Conservation Commission by Michael LeBlanc, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of replacement of railroad ties to construct a retaining wall with natural stone on map 8, parcel 37, on 19.5 West Sutton Road, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Who is here for this project? Do we have your abutters notifications? You can give those to Wanda. Have you paid all the fees?
Yeah, I did, yeah. I have, I don't know if you want to have some pictures on it, on JPEGs, if
Do
you
you
want.
have a
Um,
sketch or a plan to show us?
I do have, yeah, the basic sketches. Don't know how many people are gonna be here, but sketches.
What's your name and address?
Michael LeBlanc.
And your address?
Oh, I own the property?
Okay.
Can you tell us what you'd like to do?
Yeah, you can see it's a railroad tie retaining wall that was here when we bought the property about 7 years ago. It's all falling apart. It leads, it's on this section here, the line section basically that goes up to the road, West Sutton Road, down the stairway leading to our property.
Excuse me.
Yep.
He's back, if you wanna give him your pictures.
I only have 5 right there, yeah. I only brought 5. I don't know how much it would be.
No,
Oh, did you?
Oh, pictures,
I just-
sorry.
Pictures on
Sorry.
JPEG?
He has,
Is this the retaining wall?
Pictures of the retaining wall.
This is the railroad tie.
Railroad tie retaining wall.
I have my own pictures, but I'll, see what we got. You tell me if my pictures are adequate.
They took them.
I believe he was there today.
Yeah, so, yeah, basically it's all falling apart and, you need them replaced with a. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the, going up the stairway, you can see, pretty much the disintegrating the railroad ties. And, the driveway is up above it, so it's of course the driveway, property. And, yeah, that's going down to the street. And going down to the property. Yeah. That's the, yeah. You can see it's elevated on stone on a whole section. It's on the left there. It's just a raised stone. I don't know what you call it, patio. We have a bird feeder over there. But the railroad ties about 24 feet coming down that front section facing, the back section facing the house. Then a 7-foot, 45-degree angle section right there in the middle, and then goes up about 34 feet to the road.
And this is just looking back up the stairs.
Yeah, that's going back
So it's
up
just
to
this
the
section
street.
here on the left?
Yeah, it's the, basically, it's that whole, yeah, the angled section. 24 feet, 7 feet, and then about 32 feet going up the stairs.
I like this picture the best, it really shows everything.
Yeah.
How close to the lake is that?
It's about 110 feet from the closest section.
It's right on the road. It's far away from the lake as you can get, but
It's
still
between
within
the houses
200
in
feet.
the middle.
You just wanna put stone and field stone or something?
Natural field stone, Jim Bankston, he's done a few on the lake, and he recommended the stone, so. Well, we have a lot of other stone everywhere else, and the whole other side is stone, that supports the other driveway on the other side, stone wall.
I think anytime anybody says removable creosote railroad ties.
Yeah, I
it's-
mean, it has to be done, and it
I have
can
no
only
problem.
benefit everything, I imagine.
Brandon, you have anything to,
No, I think that removing creosote-soaked railroad ties is always a good thing. The question I would have is logistics. There's not a lot of room
He says it, yeah,
to work,
Yeah.
so the question is, how are these railroad ties gonna be
We're gonna put
stored or removed?
We're gonna get a dumpster, and he's just gonna throw them right directly into this dumpster that's gonna be on there. We have a driveway, and that's probably put on the driveway that supports it as far over to the neighbor's property as we can. And we have the other driveway to use on the other side for us, and basically just throw the railroad ties in this dumpster that we're gonna rent it. I haven't looked into the disposal company, but I know they do that, so I'm gonna rent the dumpster for that. And he has a mini excavator, I guess, that he's gonna use to excavate the land right around the railroad ties.
And there's not much, it's like all the other houses along this stretch, the houses are more or less in the way of the lake. There's a little bit of room to go on the right, a little bit of room to go around the left of the house. I don't see how there's gonna be a chance for damage to the lake, and I think this would be a big improvement.
anybody have any comments?
Have you got a building
I didn't know what, I don't know if I'm just following the process, if I have to get a building permit, you know, I don't know what the process is. Just going through the motions right now.
I'm not sure, but I think.
I did go to the other office here, I can't remember the name of it, but I don't think they said I probably didn't need a building permit, they sent me to you guys.
Well, you probably should go ask the building department too.
Yeah, I think that was who I went to first, the building department. I'll go check again, but then they sent me to you. They said the
Okay, yes.
conservation
Very
committee.
good, thank you.
See, the issue is, I think that any wall over 3.5 feet high
Yeah.
has to have a permit, has to be engineered and so forth. So, I mean, I got no problem with you doing
Yep.
the work out there, as long as everybody's assured how extensive the work is gonna be.
Right.
That's my only concern, you know, because you got a 7-foot retaining wall there, whether or not I assume it's gonna be a masonry, cement masonry?
Yeah, I'm assuming that,
Versus
yeah,
dry,
yeah.
and, you know, whatever it takes to.
He is gonna, I guess he said he was gonna terrace it, so it would be in sections going up. Yeah, so it wouldn't be like one big 8-foot wall, it would be more terraced in as he went in, so we'd lose a little bit of the driveway, you know, in the process, but.
Anybody from the public?
Make
Andy?
I'd have a recommendation is that, give it a negative determination with condition that the railroad ties are put into a dumpster and not stored elsewhere on site during the process.
Yep, no problem.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Make a motion to issue a negative determination with the condition that the railroad ties are put in a dumpster and removed properly.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you
Should have
for
got on
coming.
the agenda before the other one.
I know.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's all fell.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Do you have something for us to sign or something? Yeah, right here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, you won't receive it for anywhere between now and 21 days.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good night.
Moving right along.
You might want to stamp this in.
I have one.
Oh, you have one?
stamped, yes.
Okay. The next on the agenda is 124.5 Manchog Road. The Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. It's now 8:35 at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a request for determination of applicability submitted to the Conservation Commission by Raymond Gadea, Sutton, Mass. Project consists of removal of 5 trees on the recommendation of a Mass certified arborist on map 42, parcels 10 on 124.5 Manchog Road, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Who's here representing, okay?
I'm Ray Gadea. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this year at all. I bought the property 5 years ago, and then you start looking, and first thing I noticed was these 2 small, I guess you call them red maples. And they're nearly completely girdled around the bottom. They're infested with ants, and those was my first bit of concern when I started realizing what was happening. As it was sitting there, bits of, I thought there were caterpillar poo that was falling on us, but it was actually little bits of wood and that sort of stuff. So we have two trees right there, the little trees. These 2 trees here are really in bad shape. These trees here are really healthy. Those would have to remain there. Going towards, that's directly south, right next to the water. There's also a very large, I guess you'd call it a double stem ash tree.
Which side of the house is that on?
The ash is on the northwest.
On the roadside?
On the roadside,
Left or
correct.
right?
The ash tree that we were talking about,
No.
the double ash is this guy right here.
Oh, this guy right here?
Yes, it's a double.
Yeah.
It's double. And the tree is, according to the arborist, is considerably stressed. It's split way down at the middle here. There's some decaying fungi up at the top. There's also, looks like at some point somebody that owned the property, they put like a wire around the trunk, and it's embedded in the up above. So according to the arborist, and I think you have
No, it's in the file.
the arborist letter, that if you want, you can take a look at my pictures. Thank you. Closer.
Sitting hours.
So that's tree 3. Tree 4, I have a very large oak tree, which, beginning in 2017, the arborist is indicating that that's 80% dead. And that's from the caterpillars. And, I think he's showing that in one of these images here. Tree 5 is another swamp maple, red maple, and that tree has very considerable lot at the base and about 10 feet above. And as the arborist called it, that tree is deadheaded at the top. So I'm really not happy I gotta take these trees down. This has been a little bit of an adventure for me, because I started talking to the tree companies, and they didn't really have many arborists on hand, and I found this one guy, which he's excellent, very professional. And, so my next step is to find a tree company, if we can get approval to get these down, and it's gonna be a bit of a task, because the lot is only 40 feet wide, it's considerably deep, and there are, between myself, my neighbor, we have septic systems there, both new septic systems, and my neighbor is putting in a new house, and this ash tree is actually half of it's leaning on my side, towards my house, and the other half would be leaning towards his house. So if there's an opportunity to remove these trees, it would be now. I think that's all I got to say.
And what would you be replacing them with? It has to be native species.
I would, like I said, it's a very, very narrow lot. I've got still a number of maple trees there. I've got a really nice hickory. What I would like to do, because it's narrow and small, I'd like to potentially replace with blueberries. Blueberry bushes of some sort.
Usually it's one tree for, you take down, especially near the water that shades the lake. We have done 2 shrubs for one tree, but I don't know what anybody else thinks.
One problem I would see about planting another tree at the lake, I did ask the arborist, because I have a gully low spot there. Because my thinking was maybe, I could add some fill to that area. He thought that if I, added, more than an inch, 4 inches of loam, or whatever it was gonna be filling that low spot over time, I'd probably interfere with those trees. Those tree roots are really, I would say, not choked, but, it's, like I said, it's a very narrow spot.
So those other trees are gonna stay, those big
other
ones?
trees are gonna stay.
It
Those
doesn't
other
make
trees-
sense to
those
put a
other
tree
tree-
next to the
Those
one.
other
Right,
trees
right.
are very
Well,
healthy.
there's other
I
parts
think
in the middle.
when the tree company is there,
Septic
there's some
system.
there's a few dead limbs or really broken limbs that need to be
On
pulled.
which side of the house is the septic, is the leach field rather?
The leach field is right at the street.
It's right at the street, okay, so the trees down by the lake aren't gonna affect that?
No, those, no, the closest thing to those trees is my well, that's 75 feet, 50 feet from that location.
Is it that deep bedrock well, or?
It's a,
Don't know.
it's a drilled well.
I doubt the roots are gonna impact that. And it's lined, I presume, too, so.
Yeah, it's a
not
steel,
gonna
it's
affect
steel case,
it. Right, so that's the
steel
thing.
case well.
Roots aren't gonna affect the well.
So where would you put the blueberry bushes, or the bushes?
I think you had maybe some other pictures in there that I saw.
I come back, I can go through them again. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
The commission prefers the replacements as close to the water as you can get them.
Okay.
Is there any chance, could you point to which ones are coming down one more time, please?
It's these
Those two?
two right there.
Can blueberry bushes go between this tree and this tree? Right here?
There's an entry here to the water. There surely could be, they could be put, definitely could be put in this area here.
Well, you have the entrance to your deck right here,
Yeah.
and there's also a patio that wraps around to the right.
Right.
It goes right to a dock over here.
Right, and there's an entry to the water right here.
Yeah, there's a stairway
Yep.
right there too, so how important really is this area for when you have?
Well, this area here, unfortunately, it's another set of stairs. Apparently, at one point in time, this house had two families that didn't agree with each other.
Like most of the lakes.
They had two entrances to the basement, two entrances to the lake, and a chain link fence that went from the street to the lake. No longer there. There's a big section, at least towards the streets, not towards the street side, but I guess towards the cove section on the east side, where there's a lot of planting beds there with bushes and things.
Where is this again?
On the, if you look from the street, it's on the left side.
On the street side of the house?
Yeah.
So I went from the water over the last weekend. That's all the room he's got. There's really no room to, unless you're gonna make him tear up the patio, you can't put it there. If you go
Well,
to the.
there's the two trees there, he has that space to.
Yeah,
work.
what I'm saying was condition a couple of high back blueberry bushes right there.
Those two trees, so maybe.
Well, 10.
Well,
However many you prescribe, because you know that it's not one-to-one tree to shrub, it's one-to-one tree to tree. Depending on the size and the quality of the tree, more shrubs based on the commission's discretion.
So he's got 10 shrubs or,
Right. with
5
all the
trees.
Right, 5 trees, I don't know, 10 shrubs, it's up to you. As many or, you know.
can-
There's a section right here on my property. Here's those two little trees we're talking about.
Right.
Here's the ash, here's the oak, here's the red maple. So there, what we're talking, that section here, it's a pretty decent section right here.
Along the property line.
Along the property
Because it's
line.
not in the way. My recommendation is to put at least 4 blueberry bushes where those 2 trees are. I think they'd fit just fine. And put the other 6 wherever you can fit them. That's my recommendation.
and they have to be, what?
3 gallon.
3 gallon size?
You're fine with blueberry?
Yeah.
Or you could do,
We've always wanted blueberries.
So if you could put 4 down by the way those little 2 are coming out,
Yeah.
and if you can fit
6.
6 somewhere else on the property,
Somewhere near where the
Ne-
ones that are coming
yeah.
down.
wouldn't, yeah.
Okay.
And they need to be 3 gallon size, so they're good sized berries, not, bushes.
Right, so, and then one more recommendation that I think I'd like to suggest the commission do in the future with these particular kind of projects is to condition a follow-up inspection once everything's in the ground. Because you know, the more I think about it, a lot of these projects conditions, I never even go back, because it's not like an order of conditions, it requires a closeout. It's just a negative determination and that's it. And I think it would be a good idea to at least verify once they're in the ground.
So, planted by fall?
Yep.
Okay.
If he plans to take the trees down this summer, yeah.
That's the goal, I
Yeah,
think.
the plan, I started this activity in January, thinking about this. And I haven't been able to get anybody because there's so much tree work around. And they're all going after the cherry work. Most of this work, at least the big trees in the front, is crane work. And,
Those ones by the
my-
lake.
no,
Climate.
there's a climber, that's a climber job.
Yeah.
That's probably, believe it or not, less of an issue. My neighbor is doing demolition on his house.
Yeah.
Towards the middle or end of August. And the thought process is when he demolishes his garage and he has other trees that are coming out, then that would probably be the good site to drop a crane where it's not gonna interfere with my septic system, his septic system,
Right.
or any of my other neighbors, so.
Makes sense.
I think the fall to get these plants in, maybe not in that spot, I might be able to do those sooner.
The determination's good for 3 years.
Okay.
So call us when you get them in.
Okay. Right.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Make a
Aye.
motion to issue a negative determination, with the condition that 4 high-back blueberries, 3 gallon, are planted where the 2 small trees are along the water, and 6 of the same are planted somewhere else on the property.
Forward by the water, and six on, what do you
Six
call them, high back?
High-back blueberry.
High bush
High bush, sorry.
I like high back though, that'd be cool.
That's good, yeah.
That'd be good.
and,
And in 4 years, you'll
And
pick
and an
all up
inspection.
In an inspection, that they're there,
And 3 gallon size.
3 gallon size.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's your time.
Where are we?
So I'll continue that one.
Hmm. Yes.
Make a motion to continue Manchog Pond Aquatic Treatment to
August 16th.
August 16th at 7 p.m.
Second?
All those in favor?
Sorry. I don't know if that makes a difference to you, but when I moved there, I planted a whole bunch of, other trees. Planted at least 8 other,
Mm-mm.
arborvitaes, and I planted, I think, 6 or 8 more, this is it, on the lakeside, on the, which were,
I think it's all voted on and,
Yeah, we're all
and
good.
passed. We're
We're
done.
good. Enjoy the night.
We have a project update.
You're gonna do 172 Manchog Road
Yep.
in placement of the other. That was moved.
Yes, we're doing 172 Manchog Road, Karen and Mike Bronson on their landscaping to satisfy the order of conditions for the house that they built.
Yep. Hi everyone, Karen Bronson, 172 Manchog Road, and I have updated drawings based on your request from last time. Do you want to share? I have extras,
We
but
should have it.
they're big. And I'm just showing here, this is what I showed you last time, so, then this is the updated version, which looks pretty similar. And what you had asked for previously is to come back with 5 trees, 34 shrubs. Oops, that's exactly what we have, well, actually we have more than that. I'll give you the plant list.
Actually, I bought a book on native plants.
Actually, my landscaper gave me a book too, but it's not exactly relevant, but, because he found hydrangeas, some species of hydrangeas, there's two, I guess, that are native. Doesn't matter, we still have hydrangeas, but it's over and above the 34. The numbers are 7 bayberry, 5 summer sweet, actually, I'm thinking of my list, not this one. Starting with the trees, the 5 trees, 7 northern bayberry, 5 summer sweet. The 5 hydrangea don't really count against my 34. 12 rhododendron, the 16 microbiota, that also does not count against my 34. And then 5 shadblow and 5 high bush blueberries. And then you asked for the names of the perennials that would be planted also.
That one?
And you'll see the list includes the Latin names as well as the common names, which is one of the things you asked for. And we replaced the ornamental or horticultural plants with the native species. And there was some red vein incathis or something. He replaced that with the native species and native perennials. So that was what you would ask for from June.
Brandon, is this for a certificate tonight?
This is for a,
Permission to plant?
yeah, a minor field change.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it complies with the order of conditions.
Because the permit is expired, right, but if you remember, last time Dan was here too, it's trying to facilitate certificate of compliance, is what we're really trying to do.
so do we want a motion on this?
Wait a minute. Are these perennials counting as shrubs?
No,
No.
nope, they just wanted the named
Okay.
perennials.
Those are all additional.
Yeah, yeah.
Because otherwise, she'd have to refile,
Start all over.
start all over
Yeah.
again. I don't think that anybody wants that. So this is a minor field change in order to get a surety from the commission that it's still gonna be considered in substantial compliance when a certificate is issued. Which is all really minor stuff anyway.
I like hemlocks, but you know, the woolly adelgids there, like them too.
What does?
The-
Bugs?
Yes.
Would you recommend a different tree?
I would say that, you know, it would have a chance of, probably a 50-50 chance of getting eaten by the bugs, but anyway.
Okay.
You might want to substitute something else, but
Anyway, I think we're fine as long as it's native, right?
as long as it's native.
Right, right.
This has been so long, needs an as-built anyway, right?
I don't,
No,
an as-built
no,
isn't
no.
necessary as long as the engineer who eventually writes up the letter and the commission agree that the work is in substantial compliance, and if there's a as-built on a septic system, that's always welcome. If you have that, but,
So we're on record, do we just say we're calling this a field change, or
yeah.
if we don't need a motion, should we?
Yes.
You should, I think you should.
Make a motion
Okay,
to consider this a minor field change and in agreement with it.
Second. And once it's all done and planted, you can then move forward as certificate of compliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I just call the office when everything's done.
Yeah.
And
All
put
those
them
in
out
favor?
and stuff and-
We'll give it a trust.
All those in
verify.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What I recommend is that you get, I don't know, I forget which engineer you used, but,
We're in the hell
right, so they'll have to, Norman's gone, he's retired, have to, someone else on the staff, I presume,
Okay.
write the letter saying that the project's in substantial compliance. You should let them know about this minor field change that was approved tonight with that plan. And have them write a letter, and then we'll go out and do a trust but verify. And then have the engineer
submit the certificate of compliance application.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next is 315 Central Turnpike, and it's a new notice of intent. The Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018, at 8 o'clock. It is now 8:55 at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Kevin Rafferty, Whitensville, Mass. Project consists of construction of a driveway and overhead utilities for a future single-family house on map 24, parcels 44, on 315 Central Turnpike, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Are all the fees paid for this? But there's no DEP number yet? And,
Do whatever you like, it'll get continued anyways.
you the engineer?
I am. I'm assuming you want the...
Have you been before us before?
not.
Could you submit a resume?
Verbally, or?
No,
I don't have one?
no.
At some point.
At some point.
I certainly can.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, my name is Ronald Tuffin. I'm a registered land surveyor. I am the manager of the Whitensville Office of Carrier and Hallinan. I was hired to replace Norm Gamache, who I'm sure you all know very well. Norm has been in a state of semi-retirement for what I gather is like 2 or 3 years. But I think he's finally decided to make good on that promise. And he still works once in a while when we need him, but lucky for you guys, I get to come and try and fill his shoes, which are big ones for sure. You said we have no DEP number, so I'm assuming that
You'll
there's
have to
no chance
continue,
we'll be
right.
closed
Yeah,
tonight.
you don't have a choice on that,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, that's what I figured. This project, at one point a few years ago, I believe it was like 2014, was approved and never built. I believe Norm put in the package a request for a certificate of compliance to be issued for that notice. Just that we never did it.
It was issued earlier this year.
It was, okay.
Yeah, as a.
Excuse me, could you speak up a little?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. The previous project was never built, so we asked the Conservation Commission to close out that project prior to reviewing this project. The project you see before you is very similar to already. Basically, what we're proposing is a driveway within the 100-foot buffer to wetlands to serve a future house that will be developed outside of the 100-foot buffer. So basically, the only work we're asking you to look at is that work inside the buffer. And my client, at this point, is looking to construct that, and at the point when this project is closed out or during the construction of it, to market the lot. So right now, we don't know exactly what's gonna happen. Up here, we've got some general location for the house and septic system, but that will all be determined later. So the basic idea of the driveway is a 12-foot wide paved driveway. It's going to need to cross this finger of wetland that runs right along the edge of the road. We are proposing to fill 150 square feet of that wetland with the driveway and replicate that with 185 square feet of replication directly adjacent to that wetland. The connection from one side of the wetland to the other will be made with a, we had proposed a 24-inch RCP. It's I guess after when we opened the discussion, there are a couple of things that my client would like to amend on this plan, and certainly knowing that we aren't closing it tonight, we will submit a revised plan. Basically, he just wants to change the material of that pipe. We are taking down, as well as the wetland crossing. There is one tree that's being removed in the roadway layout. That we have a planning board filing that is coming up I think it's on the 30th to discuss that. We're also taking out the stone wall that crosses the entire property. We're proposing to take out just the area of the driveway. And there are, I believe, 18 trees that will be removed in the driveway area, and we are proposing to replace those with 18 trees of similar species, and those locations are all shown. Actually, I think we're proposing to, no, I'm sorry, it's 1-to-1, yeah, it's 18, along the edge of the driveway.
There's one more,
Fairly cut and dry.
just appears to be one more tree you're planting than you're taking down. Appears to be 20 trees that you proposed, and you're taking down 19.
There's 2 trees proposed in the public way.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, in the right of way, I was adding up below that. Correct, so there'll be two planted in the right of way to replace the one that's being taken down, as well as the other 18 that are on the property.
And those required, was it that at least that one requires, in the public way, a approval from the tree warden?
Yes, the one.
Have you received that permission?
No, I don't believe we have.
Okay. Is when that meeting is? Okay.
What's the closest your limit of work gets to the wetland area?
Well, the closest is where we're crossing the wetland, and right up at the front here, where we would be, let's see, you got a dimension 17 feet here, from the, well, that would be the limit of work, the silt fence line. Other than that, obviously, we're 17 feet there, closest on the other side is 19. Up at the end, we're 33 feet off the wetland.
The situation where there's no other means of ingress or egress, and they're using the area with the least amount of wetland alterations.
More than I
so,
thought.
I know on the top side, the wetland line stops short, but that whole upper part is wetland, so.
So it goes like.
Right, it goes back to the property line, so if he hugged the property line up there, he'd be crossing more wetland than where he is right now. So, my commentary is, well, I have a question about the tree warden. Also have a question about the wetland replication in the public way as well, because you're doing the replication not on the property, but in the public way, so what's up with that?
Yeah, that's a valid question. Unfortunately, I spoke to Norm about that, and Norm didn't have a good answer either. But I guess this is the way it was proposed and approved the last time. We can certainly, in the time between this meeting and the next, we can approach the town planning board, the DPW, whoever would. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we want to put it there because that's the closest thing to where we're filling in.
No, it makes sense, yeah. I have no issue with it personally, if highway or whoever is okay with it. responsibility for it would still be the homeowner, even though it's not technically on the property. That would have to be conditioned.
Yeah.
Make sure that they can't somehow weasel out of it.
And we usually condition that that's done before anything else, the replication area is done
That's
first.
right. Yep.
And typically, well, we're not in jurisdiction of the future home, but usually we won't give a building or approve any order until the road or driveway is constructed.
No, you have to approve the order first.
Yeah, in other words, it'd have to be done before they can get
Right.
back there,
Yes.
which is, I think, what they wanna do anyway.
Yeah, you really have to do that.
Yeah.
And the other comment I had was on the limited disturbance line. I'd like it to see it extended to the property line, so there's no open ending. So, yeah, right
This
there.
area here and here.
Yeah, there's a little space, bring
Okay.
that right to the property line.
No problem.
I think that the location of the proposed trees is good.
They have to be 2.5-inch caliper.
Yep.
It is
I
right
believe
on the
that's what's
plan,
on
too.
there, Yep.
And the other question, I've heard rumors about elevations of this pipe and the drainage swale and potential for flooding, and has any of that been looked into?
I'm assuming that, that the engineer that.
I have a feeling you're gonna get some public commentary on that in a minute.
That's not a problem, we can certainly provide whatever's needed for that, drainage calculations, what,
How much water's going through, where it's going, where it's gonna end up.
right, we are proposing a 24-inch, pipe, which is,
It's a good sized pipe.
pretty large, yeah.
Then there's the elevation of the pipe, is it gonna be backing it up? Is the water gonna be backing up, is it gonna be going through, where's the water gonna go and how you gonna, et cetera, et cetera.
And then basically, it looks like that we've got the pipe, laid on the ground where the water goes now, and then we're filling over it, to go over the driveway. So, the full capacity pipe would be available for anything coming down there. But, yeah, we can certainly have our engineers, look at that and provide, a letter of calculations to address that. But while we're on the pipe itself, one of the things my client had asked, when they saw this was that, we're proposing 24-inch RCP. They would actually prefer to use, 24-inch ABS, use 20 loading, which I don't think, should be an issue either way. We put a flare end, PVC flared end on either end. The difference being that PVC is much easier to handle. You won't need to block traffic while you're moving the backhoe around to places. You need multiple sections of the RCP. The ADS, two guys can pick it up and move it wherever it needs to be. So it's a lot easier to install. That, I wanted to mention that, but we'll certainly, revise the plan to show that, instead, unless the commission has any comments on that now.
Couple more minor things.
Sure.
On the, straw wattle center control barrier detail, you showed 12-inch straw wattle. Please make sure that there's a notation that it's 100% biodegradable. It's the kind with the, the cotton or the burlap sheathing, not the nylon mesh.
Okay.
Okay. And you did a pretty good job with the sign. There is a detail, and I emailed it to you.
Yes.
That's the one the commission prefers. That's a nice one. Not that one's bad, but I like the other one because it shows it all the way down going into the ground. Is that all right with you?
Well, actually, the one other request my client had made was for us to request that rather than signs, they'd be allowed to put boulders, where the signs are notated on the, I think there's 22, signs. They're roughly 30 feet apart, along the limit of, work. And they would, prefer to put a boulder. I don't know if you
Generally don't accept them.
even
It's kind of a hardship
Well, hold on, I got another proposal. This is something that, came in recently that was accepted, which was, granite bounds with a small disc sign on top of it that you can put just a few inches above the ground that isn't as visible, but it's still immovable.
Brandon, it's more than a few inches above the ground. It's probably
6 inches, how much?
it's 18 inches or so above the ground.
18.
Yeah, in that range.
Is that how many? Yeah, okay, sorry. My apologies.
It's kind of a hardship trying to sell.
Excuse me, could you introduce yourself?
Mike Rafferty from Katie Rafferty, Rafferty and Rafferty. You know, we put 20 signs on a single lot. I mean, if someone has to drive by every time they go to their house, 20 signs, who wants to do that? It is. I mean,
Whoever wants to
don't
have a
you think
house there.
Don't you think it's kind of overkill?
You wanna do the project?
20 signs? I mean, it's not, it just kind of common sense, kind of everyday Joe, you know, that's what I am. And that, it just, that's a lot. I mean, it's insane. I think it's insane.
That's why the granite, I personally think the granite, whatever it calls, 16, 18 inches look better. But the signs have been used on a lot of properties in town, and the homes are selling, and there's been no.
They're lower to the ground, the signs, so you can't see them
This-
much.
It's a
Well, the signs are.
No, they're, I guess they're 18 inches, but they're granite, so it is gonna be more expensive.
Well,
And
what, you can do concrete, can't you? I mean, it's the same. They got concrete, the same things you put for engineering, you know,
and they got a brass or something plate on it, I believe.
aluminum,
Is it aluminum?
Metal, either way.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
It's an option if aesthetics is an issue. It's a more expensive, option, but it's an option if the aesthetics is a problem.
The aesthetics, I think, would be a problem, so.
Did it with, Glenn's
Glenn.
project a month ago.
Well, they can think about it, cause they're not closing tonight anyway.
Or they could put one or the other,
Yeah.
the sign or the granite.
You can put, detail for either one.
Okay.
Brandon, do you want plantings in the wetlands at all?
Good point. I think that a wetland seed mix in the wetland replication area is appropriate, and you're right, Bob pointed out that there's no, I don't see anything on the plan,
We have a second sheet that's, it should have been with the notice, that's pretty much a detail of the replication area.
When I look at that, I don't see,
It specifies the legal wetlands.
where is it?
Oh, boy.
Oh, you have a replication planning legend too.
Yeah, we've got the major plantings, spelled out over here, and then in the notes, I know I saw that there was at least one place where it said.
Number 6. New England wetlands.
Yep.
That's good.
Is that, that's what I'm looking for.
is there any way of realigning the driveway a little bit so we get at least, get rid of that 19-foot?
19-foot what?
We're within 19 feet of the wetlands on the,
Said it was 17 on the other side.
yeah, well, the other side, one side or the other. You can't get them both and you get this 19 feet here. There's no way you're gonna change that one.
I think what would happen is, the end is where the wetland is the thinnest. If we were to, I see what you're saying, if we were to tilt it, so we were further away here and further away here, then you're gonna be on the hypotenuse or on an angle on the driveway, so we'd end up with more filling and more, of the wall coming down.
See, the problem is that we've got somewhat of a long-standing situation where we do not allow any construction within 20 feet of the wetlands.
25.
25, excuse me, 25. And Brandon likes to have a 5-foot buffer on top of that. That's been in place.
There are special exceptions when there's no other place to put it. It's basically in a situation like this, it's the best practicable, the best you can do. And do you think that's the best they can do?
That's why I was questioning whether or not the location of 19, whether that driveway could be shifted over
If you look at the plan,
slightly.
you've got a 30-inch oak, an 18-inch oak, 10-inch birch, and then the other ones would stay. But if we move that any further, west, away from, to make that 17 bigger, at least that 18-inch oak would have to come down, possibly the 30-inch oak. And I would make the assumption that in that 17-foot area, there are no trees of major caliber,
Yeah,
because there's nothing shown over there.
I was gonna give you the 17-foot, couldn't do anything about the 17-foot.
Okay.
It was the 19-foot I was trying to get away from.
Okay.
All right, I was giving you the 17-foot that, you know, you're replicating wetlands there and everything else, there's no getting away from that 17-foot. But the 19-foot, I was hoping you could
Yeah,
get away with.
I can certainly look at it. I don't see, other than the trees that are shown there, I don't see any obstacle to moving it over a little.
I mean, the 17, I feel that's part of the appropriate place to cross the wetlands, your narrow spot and everything else, there's
Right.
no getting around that, that's all intricate to that one wetland crossing. But the 19-foot is a little bit different, and as I say, it's something that we,
Right,
in the
that's
past,
something you
have
really try
not-
to do, sure.
Are you ready from comments from the audience?
I'm ready, sure.
Want to
I'm-
state his name again?
Dale King, Purgatory Road, I'm the corner neighbor. And that piece of property used to belong to my father and me when we were dairy farming. And we sold it, my father sold it to the neighbor on the other side of me for protection, they didn't want a house built in there. We tried perking it, we couldn't get it to perk 20, 30 years ago. Now, I'm just wondering if you're building a driveway to a piece of land that you can't build a house in, have you got a perk on it? The last one, I went to the Board of Health, was in 2003. Have you, there's no tractors been in there, I've been through the land, I've trespassed out, and there's a lot of dead birch trees, black birch, because of the wetland, they're all dying. That piece of property drains 40 acres. I brought some pictures into the Conservation Board, you can take a look at them, this is during the spring rainstorm.
They're crossing over on mine.
And it processes across their farm that they own now that I left.
I'm concerned about the
I want
culverts.
Sharon, you want us to
Oh.
state your name and
Sharon Kent, I own 24 King Road, and I am very concerned about the culverts that are there and where you're gonna be putting the new pipes in, because all the water is coming right straight through the culvert, down through between two fields, and it's flooding 3. And the water ends up down at Clark Reservoir. I am very, very concerned because it's taking away from my farmland and the number of acres I farm. I am very, very concerned. There's nowhere else that water can go but through my property.
But you're saying it already goes there?
It already goes. I even heard it this morning running.
So what we're proposing to do, won't have any impact on that, good or bad? We're not gonna
It
stop
has an
any water
impact
from
now.
going in there? Well,
I can't.
our, if we were to make your situation better, we'd make somebody else's situation worse upstream. So what we're charged to do is keep everything the same. So when this project is built, anybody downstream won't see any more water than they do now, and anybody upstream won't see any more water than they do
There's
now.
nobody downstream, that's all my property, it goes right down into.
Right, so what I'm saying is, if it goes there now, it's gonna be going there after this is done.
But you're disturbing a wetland area that sucks it up before it lets it go.
This 150 square feet of wetland,
Well,
I think that's a minimum area to take in this type of water that you're talking about, but we are replicating that, and we're replicating it with a
there's a
bigger,
very,
more square feet, so.
there's a very high water table there, because I have a
Sure.
shallow well for my well, and it's 4 feet below ground level.
Well,
right now.
that makes sense,
So
that's why
your
the
septic
wetland
system-
is there because
Can you
of
get a
the
perk for
water.
a septic system?
It's my understanding that the lot's been perked previously. I don't think the Raffertys would be, going through this process if they were concerned that the land in the back would not perk.
I would like a proof of a perk test.
Well, the problem is we can't perk until we put the driveway in to cross the wetlands and
In back time, they used to drive through the woods and do a perk.
we used to do a lot of stuff.
So now you're gonna build a driveway, spend $20,000 to put a driveway in, and get a perk that don't perk.
No, like I said, they're confident that it will perk. It has perked before. I'm sorry it didn't perk for you, but, it's my understanding that the area in the back did perk.
I understand that a perk test is only good for 3 years.
Okay,
When was the last one done?
well, we're not using the last one. We will perk again.
It goes on from the previous perk, as I understand it. You perked it once, it failed in 2003, 2004. Then somebody else came in and perked it, and it perked that time.
Yeah,
Time has gone by since then.
sure. And we will go out and perk again. We can't perk in the exact same area because that area's been disturbed, where the regulations require us to dig in natural ground. So we will find an area. First of all, you've got a pretty big lot here. I don't know where these perks were done before. We don't know where, the future owner of this lot is gonna wanna put their house, or whether it's Mr. Rafferty or someone else. They could decide that where we're showing the septic system, maybe that's where they wanna put their house, and they wanna put the septic system back here. So we will end up perking where the septic system, goes at that point. But, like I said, they're confident that it will perk. And if they're willing to go through, coming through conservation to get a permit to put the driveway through, I mean, if they're taking a risk, they're taking a risk. But the fact of the matter is that that's all we're here for, is the driveway to get us from the street to the point where the house is gonna be.
And I hate to cut you off, but we're behind, so
Yes.
does anyone else have any more comments? And they're gonna have to come back anyway.
Brandon,
What's up?
the flag in the wetlands, how old is that?
2003?
It's gonna be updated. You're basically using the same line as you were before, and I agree with that line is okay. Yep.
So when would you like to continue to?
Next meeting
2
is
weeks.
August 1st,
Yeah.
7:45.
Make a motion to continue to August 1st at 7:45.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Per commission policy, revisions have to be in a week ahead of time.
Okay.
And feel free to stay in contact with me early and often.
Sorry.
And I personally appreciate it when revisions are sent in, that you have some kind of summary memo
Sure.
explaining what was
Right,
done.
so
I
it's
don't
on the
have to-
plan, so you have to scour it to see what we changed.
Right, it's easier if we have the questions, the issues that came up tonight, which I'm sure you have in your head right now.
I'll
And-
touch base with you on that.
Right, just create a memo, to accompany the revision.
And one other thing, along with was 1 week requirement, it was PDF files as well.
Yep.
You got 2 hard copies or 3 hard copies plus a
Three
PDF.
hard copies and a PDF.
Okay. And I'll send my resume.
Have a good night.
Thank you. I'll be back up in a minute.
Last plans we got.
I left the house this morning at 5 AM.
Okay, you don't have to read this.
Oh, but you can leave it there.
All right, leave that in. 4, continue, yeah, it's a continuation. Okay,
Are we, what are these here? The next one?
78, yeah.
Can we crack the window?
Like I say,
Wanda, can you open the window a little bit, please?
they had a perk all
The
over that.
next one is 78 Hutchinson Road, Rod Judson and Glenn Kravosky.
Sorry.
Thank you, Conservation Commission. Glenn Kravosky from EBT Environmental. Mr. Judson is with his dad and some hospital issues.
1 minute. Make a motion to waive the reading of 78 Hutchinson Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Sorry.
thank you.
I'm sorry about jumping in there. I believe we did submit the revisions
You did.
7 days earlier.
Dated 7/2/18 with an executive summary.
Thank you. And then there was a few more comments that we just added per Mr. Vanif's request.
Oh, so do you have another revision? Or is that still
Well,
7?
I just picked this up this afternoon, but it's just what you were asking for was some comments on the signs, the 3 signs. This is the one area that's within your jurisdiction.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And so I told the engineers, you didn't quite get what I asked you to put on the plan. This
Always
is
that,
today.
yeah, always.
So I had sent over just a portion of the plan from my office to the engineers, get it on the plan. I pick up the plan, those signs, the 3 locations aren't on the plan. Those would be the locations. Obviously, this would be the sign that Brandon had already sent to us in the past to ensure that we have an equally spaced signs, which we don't mind those signs. It's at the beginning of the road, it's not near the house, and we would have them just along that arc of
And
the
they're pretty
roadway.
signs.
Hmm?
And they're pretty signs.
Yeah, they tell people
They
not
are.
to don't go in those wetlands. And it's a little brushy in there, so we're all set with that area. So we did want to make sure to cover that point of the signs. Mr. Paniff did ask for, and I asked the engineers to make sure that, right now this is asphalted in here, but asphalt doesn't work the same as tire scrubber or tracking pad. I told the engineers, put a tracking pad on there. They brought out that there's asphalt. So if by chance we're so lucky it closes, we have this 20-foot area, and we would take a tracking pad there and not just call out the asphalt that's presently there, because asphalt doesn't drop out dirt. Presently, it's a car road all the way over to this location, but as there's some changes in the grade to ensure to get water off this, there's a chain link fence, we're making sure that the roadway constantly just tilts towards the north, which allows water to get off the roadway. The last reading we had, it was about volume, velocity, accumulation coming to the road. Mr. Phoenix was concerned that it would potentially get onto the road, and so we want it all along the road, with slightly tilted the road to get it done. We do have a swale on the inside. It is crushed stone in there, that still will take some of the hill runoff from the power lines and the gas line. It still will bring it to the front, but anything on the road will continually get it off the road. We did locate a 4-inch plastic corrugated pipe under the drive, which is draining this crushed stone bed that you might see in that location. Sorry, I'll go up there, there are some neighbors here. So again, tracking pad, 3 signs, tilting the driveway. Those are things we've done in the meantime. At the house location, there was some question about, even though it's outside your jurisdiction, it did come up, Mr. Faniff did say that Mr. Teff might have a question about, and I will say that this is 145 feet away from your resource area, but because it's just a hole in the ground during drilling, we'll put a hole in the ground during drilling and make sure we catch the slurry at that location, so we called that out.
Much appreciated, Glenn.
My pleasure. It keeps it all in one location, it's not all over the lot. We did a calculation for this area. We do have a hydrologic soil group A here.
Yeah, but that's all filled. I mean.
But the lot itself up here is A. You know, the upper part of the lot is A.
Sure.
Sure. The Perkin Deep is an A. They did that is a Perkin Deep, and the septic is in A. This lower part is filled coming over the slope. We did call out a small basin to catch, we've seen these in a few single-family house lots, just an open depression. It only drops down 624 to 623, but it allows for, and I did call out that it was captured during a half-inch rain event, 154 cubic feet, and it can take 500 cubic feet. So it's well over designed for the half-inch. It appears that it would take as much as, if we just do the numbers, 50 goes into 500, probably 3 times more than a half-inch. So, but that was just to, you didn't want overland flow getting to your to the buffer zone. That's the 100-foot buffer there. And captured in the yard will be just a mowed area, a slight depression.
That was great.
I'm sorry, I thought that was, that for me to like, okay. But that's the project where there are other designs here, the one for going over the gas line by gas line standards, it's underneath the power line, there's telephone poles coming. What I heard today, instead of coming up Hutchinson, there was some issue about that dam, which they call the road dam. So now he's gonna have to spend more money and bring more electricity down the road, which is further away from your resource area. So there's some house further up Hutchinson that would be in this.
Wasn't there something about telephone poles? Was it
That's what I'm-
here? Yeah.
The
National Grid has-
already came in.
And they have to go.
They already got the poles approved that will be going to this house. So that's already done.
In the right of way.
But there was something about the Board of Selectmen has to approve it, and so they're gonna put them on West Sutton Road now?
No, that's
No.
the other one, that's the, Hutchinson Road shoulder poles,
Okay,
at 38 Horn Drive.
okay.
They might have been approved, but now there's a 6-month study, apparently Fish and Wildlife wants, we're putting them, or is it DCU, to put them on that old dam, the road, which is called a dam. So as of my talking to Mr. Judson today, the poles won't be in your jurisdiction even coming over the dam. They're gonna spend more money for a couple more poles and come from up Hutchinson Road down to this location.
We're taking the dam out.
Instead of a 6-month study on wildlife habitat, and
No,
I
not the
said,
road.
well, is it
No,
a
we're
wildlife
taking the dam
habitat
out.
study or is it a floodplain? Was it a flooding study or floodplain? He wasn't quite sure. He was gonna give me the name of National Grid to talk to, see if I could save him money by using 2 poles coming from Sutton instead of coming down the road. But to me, I got enough to do. Let him-
It's out of
let
our
him spend the money
jurisdiction
and have
anyway.
it
Right, it doesn't
down.
matter to us anyway.
You know,
Okay.
right, it's outside your jurisdiction.
Right.
So
Right.
at least coming down the road.
All right, anybody have any?
Yeah, we got a revised drawing in the file?
Yes.
Well, the one
Sorry.
for today, I got one dated 7/2, what's the last revision date on this one?
Thanks. Thank you. 7/18 for a conscom review. 7/2 was the one before that. Here's 3 copies of, with those minor changes.
On to
That
stamp
you
them
asked
in.
for. Thank you.
Can I take a quick look, close up on one of them? So
Yeah.
the signs shown here?
That's why I gave you the exhibit, that's what the engineer had not put on there, and that's what I just gave to Joyce, was where the signs would go.
You have the sign detail on sheet 2, and I think that it can be conditioned, and I'm going to be going over that during the pre-construction meeting, we'll be doing the inspections.
Trash.
Anyway, so I think that,
Well, I have to keep them.
this is good.
I did sign, or I did initial that little detail I gave you, if I can add that in.
Oh, this
as
one
an
right here?
exhibit. Yes, sir, just to show that that's what will be put in per your request, with the even spacing along that arc.
Right.
Where we are in the,
It'll be in the order of conditions, it's just,
Perfect.
it's nice to have it on the plan, because that's often the only thing that contractors read, but we do a pre-construction meeting, and I will point it out.
Thank you again.
Any comments from the audience?
I just have one question.
Your name and address?
Christopher George, 123 West Sutton Road. I have one question, whether it's within the purview of this commission, and that's the septic system. We already have flooding on our side of the property line here, if I'm,
This would be you,
might illustrate.
Callaghan?
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
And I'm concerned that if this is up gradient from our property, that we may get additional drainage. They've got a proposed, I believe it's a 440 gallon tank.
Yes.
So I'm just concerned, because their leach field is here, coming down this way, our leach field is here, coming down this way.
Could I say, there is, it's designed to be at least 4 feet above the water table. It's designed so that obviously it's a gravity, water goes down slope. And we have this hill system directly down grading us. We are taking our runoff from the lot. It is sloping away from you, we're down directly to the water down below that management area, wildlife management area. Normally, we don't get questions on leach fields, 440 gallons, causing a volume of water going to someone else. That's the first I came up with it, but I don't think under the wetland protection regulations that is normally comes into play. It's designed according to Title V.
Right,
And that's what our engineers.
Two things, it's the design in Title V, so therefore, and it's more than 100 feet away, so it's presumed to be protecting the 8 interests of the act. As far as flooding, potential for flooding when it's outside of the commission's jurisdiction, there's very little the commission can do about it under their powers. If it was in the buffer zone, we could take a closer look, but this has been designed to protect the public interests under the Wetland Protection Act, so, and that's as far as this commission can go.
I could just say one small other thing, under state DEP wetlands, if it was 4 house lots or greater, then we would have to do more for stormwater, but at 1, they deem that it's not affecting stormwater, and so they don't require any more. We've done more under the bylaw for stormwater than what the state would require, which, and we even did a little bit over here, so we can trap some water coming off the lot, and then right next to the slope, and then it goes down the slope.
Thank you for the explanation.
My pleasure, sir.
All right, anybody have anything? No?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to issue an order of conditions for 78 Hutchinson Road.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you're running to the next meeting. Will you bring up, Brandon, what I sent to you for Almsbury? Is that like at all?
I wrote it in at the bottom
Okay, thank you.
of the agenda, I hand wrote it in, and I went there today, and I believe,
I went there yesterday in the middle of the rain.
And are we seeing some problems over there?
I didn't see any, but it's kind of,
You
well, I didn't get out because it was in the middle of the
there are issues
deluge.
that we can talk to Matt Stencil about.
Yeah,
Well, the road is collapsed, that secondary road is
right.
collapsed.
It's where they straightened it out, and it's on the curve part where, yeah.
The old road is collapsed.
Yes.
Not the new road.
Right.
All the dirt was, on the photos, was directly, totally filled in the mouth of that culvert, so that dirt
Yeah.
would be downstream.
Yeah.
And I didn't have time to get there today after the storm event, but I'll take some photos tomorrow.
Well, I
I've
haven't.
already taken photos, so
Okay, so you're
I'm gonna
gonna-
be in touch with Matt Stencil, the highway director.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I didn't get out of my car because it was raining too hard at the
Yes.
moment.
Thank you. We're just trying to restore that stream, as you know, with
Yes.
and stopping all sediments coming in and that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
Eighty was the Providence Turnpike.
Is the beverage cart out there somewhere?
I mean, I've got one mistake that I want
You could, you on that side, right?
I just put those, I didn't go there.
Also, Ron,
Do you wanna take it for tomorrow?
from
Yeah.
Gurrier and Hellman. So G&H had issued a letter addressing the 3 open items from the last meeting. Brought
You
it
wanna
to
wait a
just in case
second
there
till
was
we
any-
finish signing this?
Oh, yeah,
Finish
no
one thing
problem.
before we start another?
I was looking out for Brandon, I think he's trying to get out.
We all are. I'm leaving the church.
What time do they close the gate to Rhode Island?
11.
I hope not too soon, I'm going in. And 46 gets shut down.
All right, now, 80 Providence Turnpike.
Yes, as I said, I'm Doug Carter from Clean Energy Collective, with these Ron Tutman from Guerriere and Hellman. So we left the last meeting with 3 open items. G&H did issue a letter addressing those. We just had to correct a couple check dams on site, and then they were happy with the site and was able to issue a clean letter for the 3 open items. So happy to answer any other questions while we're here, but hopefully no new issues have.
I think Brandon was there yesterday, and there may be some new issues, today,
Okay,
and
so we
new
do
issues
have
from
a
yesterday.
letter from Mr. Tubman, who's sitting right here, and it's your assertion that the project is in substantial compliance?
Doug, myself, and Norm walked the site a few weeks ago and looked at those 3 outstanding issues in particular, and we actually had agreed on some of the stuff that check dams needed some work. We did send a crew out to check some elevations in the drainage system. There had been some concern that maybe part of it wasn't flowing in the right direction. That seemed to be all set, and that area at the end had been stabilized, or was looking pretty good when we were out there. I don't know what you're gonna say about being out there.
After the
Did
4
rain.
inches of rain
Yeah,
yesterday?
that was,
Yeah, I have some concerns, and it has to do with the bottom of that riprap slope. So, just sit back, relax, and have a listen.
July 18, 2018, 80 Worcester Province Turnpike. I am Brandon Fana, performing an inspection for certificate of compliance, trying to close this thing out. There's been some issues with excess water causing sedimentation in the wetland below, and generally just not, the silt fence has been having a difficult time keeping things stable, and water and sediment from moving down the hill past the bottom of the riprap swale. Alright, so yesterday on the 17th, we had quite a rainstorm, about 3 inches in a short period of time as part of a cold front thunderstorm. I am in the wetland replication area, which is not supposed to be part of the stream, but the water that's coming down the riprap swale is going into the woods, making a left-hand turn northerly, and then it is, instead of going into the stream along a drainage way that is just beyond that silt fence, which would be the west side, it's actually turning into the middle of the wetland replication area. See the lower end of it, the easterly end of it, closest to the highway, is down. And I'm going to walk up. And you'll notice a couple of things. you'll notice that the signs of the flow, the plants that are all bent over in downstream direction, where the direction the water was flowing. In fact, there's some small twigs that have been pushed up into one spot. And you also see a lot of junk, because this area was a local dumping ground at one time. The whole reason for the replication area was mitigation for unavoidable impacts associated with the solar farm. So we decided that, I should say the commission decided, that if you're going to do a well replication area, clean up the old dump and turn that into your replication area and get rid of all the junk. Well, I don't know if they got all of it. You can see here, there's still quite a bit of junk, and some of it might be coming from areas that are outside the wetland replication area that, they looks like a perfectly natural area today, but several decades ago, if not more than that, was likely part of the dump. So I'm just following the flow path upstream or uphill. I think they're very fortunate to have this old fieldstone wall here. It acts like a natural check dam. Otherwise, the flow might be even stronger going through here. There's some straw from the straw bales.
Hopefully not bales.
So then what happens is at this point, I turn to the west, and there we have the riprap swale. You see all these ferns that turned down where the water was flowing over it. In quite a velocity, I can imagine. Here is the silt fence. Okay. So the water evidently from the swale was rushing down at such a clip that it filled this area up, pushed the silt fence over, and might have actually done that little bit of scouring out right there. Then we have this two groupings of stone. I don't know if they were placed there or if they
Floated there.
were brought down by the water. There's a good chance they might have been brought down by the water. Let's walk up hill just to see.
Let's stop there. That's the big problem. There's a lot more, I always had a feeling because of the dense till, we got a lot of hard pan on this hill, that we'd have water table issues. And when we get a rain like this, I saw one just like this last year too, water really flows hard down that riprap swale. There's a lot more water coming off this site than I think anybody ever expected to. And it's just, I think it gets exacerbated or exponentially increased at the, where that pipe is that comes from the infiltration basin, the underground infiltration basin. Once it gets to that point, there's not a lot of stone below that pipe. And I think we might have to extend more stone further down, because if we get a storm like this, we saw a little bit of scouring. It looked to me like those pretty good sized riprap got moved down the slope, and it is barreling down the hill and going through the wetland replication area, which I think that if nothing is done over time, it's gonna scour right through the middle of the replication area. I mean, that just negates the whole concept of a wetland replication area. So I still have major concerns only about this area right here, really, and its ability to be stable over the long term. You go to the swale up top. This is the grass swale that runs along the back of the businesses and the houses on 146. There's a lot of sedges and rushes and even some cattail in there. But there's still areas in the middle that are scoured and there's water flowing. So, I mean, it's a lot of grass. It's more than 75%. We get this scoured area in the middle.
The wetland sedges and rushes are still bent over as a result of the flow. Here.
So it's just a lot of flow.
I'm now behind Minardi's landscaping. At this point, the signs of flow start to die down.
One more spot I gotta get to.
It's still water. There's still signs of flow, just not as strong.
A lot of dogs in the kennel.
They knew I was coming.
So there's check dams there, huh?
Right.
Blow out right there. Let's blow out underneath the Jew mesh. In fact, right at the base, it's a buildup of sediment that couldn't quite make its way up. The rest of it looks fine.
Okay.
So what do we do?
It's up to you.
How do you fix it?
Something
It's
in
up to them.
black t-shirt.
Mm.
He's the engineer.
Navy blue.
Navy blue, excuse me.
Well, it certainly doesn't look like it did last week.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pretty extreme storm event, for sure.
But we have them, and it has to be able to withstand something like that. If we don't, over the, this is gonna be here for, 30 years, right? And yes, some grass will grow up, but we're still gonna get storms like that, and it's gonna
Or
continue
worse.
to go up. Yeah, or it's gonna continue to slowly get worse and worse and worse. And this up here is minor. But down at the bottom of the rap slope is the area I'm most concerned with, and I'm personally not comfortable giving 100% certificate until something is, a little bit more is done, some kind of solution at the bottom of that slope to slow down flows during these kinds of storms. What do you think?
Back to the drawing board.
Any ideas now, or you wanna think about it?
No, I think I'd like to give this to one of our PEs and have them take a look at it.
What do you think the answer is, Brandon? They keep coming back. I feel bad, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do too. I think the only thing I can think of is some more stone, or maybe even a sediment trap dug in at the bottom.
Do you think a sediment trap would help? Or would that just be a jump for water?
You're talking about a plunge.
Yeah, plunge pool, or some kind of depression, we're wrapping it to,
I mean, something like yesterday, I think it would just right through that, wouldn't it?
it's better than what we have now. Another thought is maybe making the riprap deeper throughout the riprap swale, because the water does flow on top, over the top of the stone during big storms, and just zips right down. So if the stone was deeper, at least that's something, a little bit more to slow it down. I did a video back in July of 17, 8-2, I think this is the one. Yeah, this was in the rain, yes.
Today is Wednesday, August.
See the water? It's going right over the top.
Add more.
There's no stone to slow it down once it gets that high. Yesterday, and that storm last year was nothing like yesterday's storm. It was maybe, it's probably less than half as intense. It was probably even higher. So perhaps you put more stone down the middle so it trickles through the stone and the stone slows it down more. It's a thought. I'm not an engineer, but it's a thought.
It's up to them to figure out.
Yep.
We're using larger riprap at the bottom too.
Right. Right, yeah, because
If that carried it.
I was amazed that those two little groupings of stones,
And they were big stones.
they were big stones. They had to have been moved down there by the water. That's impressive. Yes.
You should see my house.
Okay.
They carried,
Okay, we don't need to,
Eight yards of stone.
we gotta, yeah, my driveway too. But it's now almost 10 o'clock, so let's move on.
Okay. So we'll come up with a plan,
Thanks for coming in.
back?
Yeah.
Sorry you sat through this
Yeah,
for
and
3
Whatever
hours.
solution, let's work it on the fly. Hey, can we do it, you know, no need for further plans, and let's just get it, you know, coordination in the field and do it.
Okay. We can do that.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Want me to go get him? Because I gotta recuse.
Yeah.
He's asleep in the rec room. Sorry to make you wait so long. Our first one in a long time. You're up there.
Okay, now, I'm gonna give you both of them.
Yes, can I open both of these at the same time?
Yeah, I suppose you can, 'cause it's past the time anyways.
Can I?
Oh, yeah.
So, can we do the two at the same time?
Well, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
Let's do them separately.
Okay. Okay, Lot 1, Stockwell Farm. Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018 at 8:50. It's now 10 o'clock. At the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Oxford Road, Sutton, Mass. The purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Stockwell Farm LLC, Sutton, Mass. The project consists of constructing a single-family home with private well and septic, paved driveway, and associated grading and utilities on map 19, parcel 69 on lot 1, Stockwell Farm Way, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Have all the appropriate fees been paid? Travis, do we have your resume on file somewhere?
I believe you do.
Okay. Okay.
For the record, Travis Brown with Andrews Survey and Engineering here on behalf of Stockwell Farm. This is for Lot 1. The filing for the individual work at that lot is part of that 4-lot subdivision that we previously permitted through the commission. Lot 1 is here. Leland Hill Road is in this location. Stockwell Farm Way comes up. The cul-de-sac ends just off the page. So we have proposed a house this brown area here outside of the 50-foot buffer. This area here will have a driveway, it'll be a side load into that garage on the end. We're proposing a private septic system in this location outside of the 100-foot aura. We're also proposing a proposed well, which needs to be 100 feet from that system in the back here. The majority of this site, or all of this site, is existing meadow. The tree line is shown here. There's also a stone wall, existing stone wall behind it. So what we've done is we've placed a split rail fence at the 25-foot buffer zone with a couple of breaks in that fence. This area between that buffer zone and that stone wall we're calling existing meadow to be cut a couple times a year from July 15th to October 15th. There will be signs placed at the back of that fence at the 25-foot buffer zone with reference to that wetland there. We've also added signs around this basin. There's a detention basin on this lot with a drainage easement. We've added signage in this location all the way out to the street so that it's clear. With these, we've added a couple of roof drain locations, so we will infiltrate the roof drainage as best we can. Anything that's not captured in those would overflow, as we've done in the past on these projects. So on the downhill side, we're not able to put Coltech units because of groundwater depths. Without excessively filling that end, there's just not separation to groundwater. So what we are proposing is downspouts with dissipators in that location. These would presumably run grade-wise into that basin, which also requires infiltration for that lot as well as the rest of the subdivision. I've had some dialogue with Brandon based on his review. We've revised the plans to add that split rail fence and the Coltech units. Any questions from the commission? I'd be happy to answer.
So I recommended a split rail fence in this case, because if you look over by the house, there's a 10-foot change in grade from the house down to the bottom. It's really steep, it's really fast, and somebody's gonna be mowing that, and it's gonna be real easy for them to go into the flat meadow part, even with the signs, I think. So I just asked if we could do a little bit more surety with a fence. And he agreed, and I think that's a great idea in this case. And I also, just as the commission's done in the past, where you've had an old hayfield, they will be able to mow between the stone wall, which is the wood line, and the fence twice a year between July 15 and October 15 each year. Travis is kept in very close contact with me through emails and has done everything I asked.
Somebody gonna crash into the fence with a lawnmower?
Well, it's better than going into the meadow when they're not supposed to.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to issue an order of conditions, notice of intent.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What was the rest of the issue of the order conditions, what?
Huh?
What did you say?
Notice of intent, and order of conditions. Will you sign this?
Did you sign it?
Yeah.
That's what I'm on.
I only have 2 signatures on this for 78 Hutchinson.
Did I sign it? Yeah.
Travis, did you bring full-size copies of the 712 revision?
Oh, we provided them earlier in the recent.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Or did you
Should
already?
be 3 of each.
I got them right here, thank you.
This is his signature.
Reading?
No, you can't.
Yeah, not an opening. Oh.
Yeah, it has to be read out.
Here's this one, Wanda. Hey, Lot 2, Stockwell Farm Way. The Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018 at 9:10 p.m. It's now 10:05 at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Oxford Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review a notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Stockwell Farm LLC, Sutton, Mass. The project consists of constructing a single-family home with private well and septic, paved driveway, and associated grading and utilities on map 19, parcel 69, on lot 2, Stockwell Farm Way, Sutton, Mass. This notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. All the fees have been paid, the green cards are in.
For the record, Travis Brown, Andrews Survey and Engineering. This is for the Lot 2 filing on behalf of Stockwell Farm. Just general reference, Lot 1, which we discussed, is here. Lot 2 is just beyond that driveway off the cul-de-sac. So the proposed house is in this location, about 60 feet off of that wetland line outside of the 50-foot. We have this driveway, which is just into the 100-foot aura off the cul-de-sac. We have a proposed septic system outside of the 100-foot, and a proposed well here, which is outside of the 25, which is in the existing meadow. So that existing meadow comes up this stone wall here and actually turns. We have a small area of clearing in this location that would be just inside the 100-foot area. Again, we're proposing split rail fence along the 25-foot buffer zone here. Same scenario as Lot 1, there's an opening which will allow that cutting, as Brandon mentioned earlier, 2 times a year between July 15th and October 15th. Again, Coltech units, we're able to capture some of that roof, infiltrate those areas here. We've provided signs to be placed on the backside of that split rail fence. And the erosion control would be here, the 100% biodegradable water liquid.
Backed by silt fence, which is something I forgot last time. It was such a steep, quick drop. I asked to double up with a silt fence behind the wattles. Again, same comments as last time. He's done everything I've asked.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Motion to issue notice of intent,
Orders of conditions.
order conditions.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What? Oh, it's inside, yeah, it's here.
What do you need that for?
I was gonna sign it.
No, you signed the
No, you
order.
sign the order
Okay.
right there.
Oh.
Some of them are high, some of them are low,
Oh.
depends on, I don't know why they do
Looking
that.
for those pictures of
You
the
gotta
124
cover up with a piece of paper. Find it.
Yep.
124 and 124.5 at the same time. Messed me up.
Oh, it messed us both up. I kept trying to figure out what was where. But,
Is this lot 2?
Okay, we're in the home stretch. 124 Manchog Road, the Sutton Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018, at 9:25. It's now 10:10, at the Sutton Town Hall, 4 Uxbridge Road, Sutton, Mass. Purpose of this hearing is to review the notice of intent submitted to the Conservation Commission by Ronald Hage, Whitensville, Mass. The project consists of construction of a single-family home with private well, septic, paved driveway, associated grading and utilities on map 42, parcels 9, on 124 Manchog Road, Sutton, Mass. Notice is publicized in accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, commonly known as the Wetlands Protection Act and the Sutton Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Again, green card's in,
Yes.
Yep.
fees paid? Okay. Travis?
Can I just tell you something? When you do your mailings, you don't have to use a green card, you can use certificate of mailing from the post office
Okay.
instead.
I'll let our secretary.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Travis Brown, Andrews Survey and Engineering. I'm here on behalf of Ron Hadge, who's also in attendance tonight. This is for an address of 124 Manchog Road. It's an existing cottage, existing two-bedroom cottage with an existing garage. There's an existing septic system that's fairly recent. We intend to use that septic system going forward. There's an existing well that will be used going forward. So Mr. Hadge is wanting to cut or remove this cottage here and replace it with a larger house that he intends to move permanently to. There's already, as I mentioned, a house here. There's a proposed deck. So he's going to maintain the proposed deck line in proximity to the lake, Manchog Pond, which is here. The proposed house is actually 4 feet further from Manchog Pond than the existing house. That existing detached garage will be removed, be replaced with a driveway in this location, which will lead up to that garage here. We've done a couple things. In Mr. Hadge not wanting to do gutters, we provided a stone infiltration strip along those gutter lines to infiltrate some of that stormwater. Also changing this area, which is now kind of a gravel driveway, making it paved, we've added a stone infiltration strip along there, which will allow runoff, which flows in this direction here, to be infiltrated, before affecting any properties potentially downslope. Mr. Hadge has done a number of plantings over the last 3 years. We provided some photos in the notice of intent. As part of this, he is proposing to cut down 3 trees. There's a 24-inch maple here, 28-inch elm, and a 24-inch maple. So those are located in the area of the building and then the driveway. Also, there will be a 24-inch maple removed here. We provided a letter from an arborist and some photos. That tree is unsafe at this point in the opinion of the arborist. That information's been provided. Be happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
I had looked at the plans and was questioning about the septic system, so I got a little bit of an education yesterday when I went to the Board of Health. So they said it was 2014, it was new. And I learned that it's for a 2-bedroom thing, and that there were variances in order to do stuff before, and if the house goes to 3 bedrooms, then it negates all those variances.
That's correct. So it is an existing 2-bedroom cottage. This house will be 2-bedroom as well.
Right. As long as the office has the appropriate wide window or whatever in it, so that it doesn't have the presumption of privacy, so that it's an office and not a bedroom, which was something else I learned, that a bedroom had to have a window in it and all these certain things.
Closet too.
What are you gonna replace the trees with?
So as I mentioned, there's a number of newer plantings that Mr. Hadge has done. Those are in this location. He's also put some behind this little area with a retaining wall on they're part of the notice, I don't know if you have some.
So what's he gonna do to replace the
Yeah,
trees?
we just told somebody earlier they couldn't do that, so he's gonna
Yeah.
have
You
to.
can't use existing
No,
plans.
He's
no.
gonna have to replace it, either 1 for trees or 2 for 1 for a bush.
Closer to the water preferably.
So these are mature trees, I didn't hear the specifics, so I assume you're talking about 124 and a half, those trees being.
Yeah, what does he have, 3 coming
Four,
down?
four.
Well, he has one that's potentially unsafe, I guess we can argue about that one, but these 3 that are healthy, I think would be the.
But they're in the way of the structure. Right.
These ones are.
The unsafe one counts in the same category.
Right. So,
Fair enough.
what do you think of two shrubs for each tree?
Yep.
And where can you put them?
There's gonna be an opportunity, and I spoke to Mr. Hedge about this along this property line after the house is constructed, because he's gonna have windows and to have some sort of shrubs in that location.
Right, and everybody wants to put them down the
Down
property
by the
line because
water.
it's the most convenient thing, but the
Right.
commission would urge you to try to put something down by the water. It doesn't have to be all of them, but something. So let me bring up a picture and then we can see what we have to work with here.
If you have geese and you put them across the front, it keeps the geese out.
It's similar to the other one where it's another tight lot, that's.
Right, so this is what we have to work with. Come on. What can be done, anything?
Well, originally when I had met you, we had taken a tree down and you asked me to plant several plantings that were on the list. And I did, and then we built that whole garden there in the center of the picture. We planted by 124.5 steps. And then on the whole right side, I sent a picture and we put in hollies and bushes and went way above beyond the original request. So what I thought was,
Hold on. There we go.
seeing I planted all in here. All the hollies, built this up, that is the barrier. And then Ray, my neighbor who was here earlier, put all these in. So I thought in this area along this side would be a great place on the slope down to plant. It would be near the water.
To run parallel to the other shrubs?
Yeah, because it would just increase that buffer. It wouldn't take away from the little 30 feet that I got. And I already planted on the water in that right corner. I planted on the left. And I think there's another picture that really shows all the plantings on the left side.
I just noticed something, you have a dock there. Is the dock on the plan there? I can't see it from here.
It's on the plan. I asked him about it, whether or not it meets the dock policy. It does, with the exception of, I think you're gonna need to put there's two things. Number one,
Reflectors.
it's not centered. And number two, it doesn't have, does it have any reflectors at the end?
Yeah.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but the other thing too is that this dock's been here prior to the dock policy. So I don't think there's much to be done, but it's there. So, what do you think on the shrubs?
Well, there's another possible change on the other side of the house. They went from a gravel driveway or lawn now to almost
Well,
80% asphalt.
Right, so one of the questions that I had for Travis, I asked him about grades on the driveway, following existing, are they changing, and how are you going to infiltrate additional runoff, seeing as we're going from gravel to pavement?
Yeah, so what we've done is, in general, the grades are gonna stay the same. There's gonna be some minor grading in this area. So water now flows, this is kind of the low point of the site. So it gets to here and then it runs off. So that flow pattern's not gonna change, but what we will do is provide that stone strip to be able to infiltrate some of that runoff, which will also remove sediment, before affecting anything beyond that, potential other properties.
So, this is coming down right here. Driveway is gonna be coming right through the middle of this thing, okay? So, the grade is very slight, it's like 1% slope, going towards 124.5, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you're gonna put what?
A stone filter strip, so that'll be 18 inches wide by 2 feet deep. It'll basically have stone, you'll have some fabric, you'll have some stone above it. So then that water will run across that, be infiltrated in there, whatever that can handle, which would be a reasonable amount given the slopes, gentle slopes. Anything else will continue down kind of in the flow patterns that it is now.
I guess twofold question. One is what's the soils? Is it a granular soil? Will it take the water? And secondly, the water doesn't go in perk into the ground. Where does it ultimately end up going?
I think now, I guess maybe Ron could speak more to that, but I think it meanders between some buildings.
Yeah, but now
down
we're
towards-
capturing in our stone trench.
Yep.
And the stone trench does it go anyplace?
No, it'd just be infiltrated into the ground.
So
the soils are good there, so that system is in the ground, you know, it's
Yeah, so I
pretty
mean,
sandy
if-
soils.
if given storm event, the ground doesn't take all the water.
Mhm.
The system is charged and it just percolates out of the ground then versus, or goes up against the foundation of the house or garage or?
Yeah, I mean, it would still go in that direction, so whatever, if you wanna say it's charged, you know, that would overtop and then keep going, you know, kind of be level spread, because that's a fairly long stone trench.
I have an idea. How about a rain garden and you could put some shrubs in it?
It's a great idea, and I wouldn't be opposed to it, but this lot is 40 feet wide, I don't see the potential of putting a rain garden in. We have a septic tank, a pump chamber, we're trying to provide a driveway to this house.
This one. Did we get a DEP number on this?
We did.
0871.
The current area you're driving in is pretty well packed now, right?
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
probably
it's basically gravel.
just like all the other ones over there.
Is it near Kate's?
Yeah, it's right next to, a couple away from Kate's. I don't have an issue with the driveway because I don't think it's much different than what's there.
Well, you feel good that you have 2 feet of separation between the bottom of your stone trench and the water table?
Yes, because that system is quite a bit lower, and we had to maintain 3 feet to that.
So yes. You know, being a single-family house, I think this is pretty robust design on the stone trench myself. I don't know if Bob thinks otherwise. There's only so much you can do. You get a big storm, it's gonna sheet flow down towards 124.5. How often is that gonna happen? Hopefully not that often.
Could have days like yesterday.
Is there anyone from the audience? Bob?
Still haven't decided on where these shrubs are gonna go, for sure. So, let me go back to there. Oops. Where would you like them?
8 of them.
8 of them where? Oops.
Well, I think I can satisfy you, have them down by the water. On that right side, I could start, I don't wanna block raising our 2 yards, but 2 or 3 or 4 feet in, just so we can, our kids, we share the water, it's the lots are so tight, his family swims here all the time, it's cause he doesn't have anywhere for the kids to swim. So we have a little passageway right here, so probably 4 to 6 feet up, and then I could just plant right in between, right up. If you want 8, I'll do 8. If you want
It
10,
can
I'll-
be any
Sure.
shrubs that are native.
Okay.
Or you can mix and match. You don't have to have all blueberry or all azalea or whatever. But, I mean, they have to be native.
Sure.
And, you know, not little sticks when you put them in.
Well, no, we put a lot of effort to make it symmetrical now. We way exceed what we were asked to do before because we like the look. We want landscape nicely.
Mhm.
So, no, I'm not gonna put a little tiny. I'm gonna integrate it on two-dimensional, so we have a higher level where Ray planted than a lower level. And we do wanna do the native hummingbird and butterfly bushes we did before, cause
Yep.
it's beautiful. So we wanna do it.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. Make a motion to issue an order of conditions for 124 Manchog Road with the condition that 8 native bushes are planted in along that area we discussed.
Near the water.
Near the, kinda near the yes, near the water,
To be inspected once, planting is done.
to be inspected when it's planting.
Well, they
and
gotta
stuff.
have the COC anyway, it's an NOI.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for bearing with us tonight.
Oh, thank you. Sorry you have work to
We
do.
could make it quick.
Good work.
That was good.
Okay, the minutes?
No, we got one more thing.
Oh, we do?
This poor gentleman here has been sitting for 3.5 hours
Is that the Leaven Hill?
for,
What's it?
no, for 9 Hardback.
Oh, okay.
Oh, by the way, my cousin's funeral was 2 weeks ago, and her husband is 90-something years old, and I took him down there, and he lived in that house.
Okay, so here's the issue, is that they have sent in a certificate of compliance requesting a couple times. The first time, there was a description, but no as-built plan, which was required. And now there's some questions about how the level of detail, is the level of detail adequate for what they've done? Because we've had a commission member be concerned about that level of detail.
Just for the record, I'm the commissioner.
So, would you like to go over those concerns, Mr. Taft?
Yeah,
It's better now. It's hot.
of course, the original drawings did not show, I guess, did not show a riprap swale or anything along those lines, correct?
Let me get it out, so I don't put you on the spot. This is from, what year is this from, 14, 15? 15. Right, 900. There it is. Okay. Right. Final. Here's what the final plan looked like. No berm.
Is this one that had all the trees along the road?
No, this is the
No.
one that had a stream and there was an
Yeah.
old little farm dam,
Yeah,
and the part of the mitigation was
across
getting
from
rid of that little
Blue's
concrete
store.
head wall.
yeah.
Contaminated site, they took the request of that down. after
Oh,
flood
okay.
down.
There's a little riprap area that there's a oil,
Okay, I'm thinking of the wrong one then.
this is where they store all of
The,
yeah, the things for the concerts.
yeah,
Directly
okay,
across from Baldomies, right?
yeah, okay. I was thinking of the other one on Harback.
Isn't that a battery plant at one time or something?
That's where they were gonna do, take something in a stone wall out, and they were gonna open up that stream so it would
Yes,
flow
and they did,
along.
and they did. And I checked that out a while back, and I think they did a good job.
And then Bob wanted the oil trap in the,
Right.
Which I don't know if it's there or not.
Last time I was there, I took a picture, I think you said that didn't look very good.
But as I say right now, it almost appears as if the riprap fills in that entire area, according to the as-built drawing.
Here's the oil, what do you call it?
That's a boom, Williams over sock.
I thought there was something supposed to be in the drain, in the,
It's a well absorbent sock that's supposed to be in a small detention pond, trap or whatever, and the water was supposed to be directed to that before it entered the stream.
Or a little sediment trap.
And my question, one of my questions was I didn't see that on the as-built drawing. So I don't know whether it's in place or not, and if I look at what's colored for the riprap, it appears the riprap goes over the top of where the little sediment trap was supposed to be, so that's part of my question. And look at, for all intents and purposes, this is the headwaters to the Coal Stream Brook that everybody's concerned about downstream.
no.
And, you know, speaking for myself and I think for the board, we don't wanna be looking at this lately and having something happen downstream with it as important as everybody has deemed that brook is for fresh native trout. So,
Oh, is that Glenn's Brook?
Oh, yeah.
so it's a case
No,
of trying to make sure
that's
that
not the headwaters. That's up
condition
by
it to
Pleasant
start
Valley.
with, trying to make sure that we follow through with it now so that everything is as best as we can, is up to date, so that if anything happens, it's not on our watch, so to speak. So that as-built drawing showing the riprap really didn't tell me anything. There's riprap there, and then there was a dialogue, which I don't know who presented it, and said, well, we put the riprap and then we raised it up so it's a little bit of a berm so that it keeps, well, that, again, that doesn't mean anything to me looking at it. I don't see any profile across it to envision what that is. This sediment trap, which was supposed to be collecting, that was supposed to be the low area where the water was leaving the site, the surface water that was leaving the site, if there was any surface water. And it was supposed to be collected there, and I'm not sure that it's, based on that as-built, that that's not all riprap now, instead of being what it was supposed to be. I did ask a question because I didn't know. I'm sure that the order of conditions required that the catch basins be cleaned out on a regular basis, annually, I would assume. And I didn't know whether or not that had been done. And I would have thought that the catch basins had traps in them, to be honest with you. That's typical construction. It has been a typical construction for quite a few years, is having traps and catch basins, particularly those that are associated with some sort of washing operation where you're washing whatever off of these panels, and you would expect that you would wanna capture anything that would float before it went down the pipe and out into the brook.
Here's the table on stormwater system inspection and maintenance schedule. So we've got dry well catch basin, maintenance frequency as needed, water quality swale once a year, reseed and mow as necessary, sediment trap, remove sediment 4 times a year or as needed. Replace oil absorbent boom as needed or following spill event. So it's all right there. The operation and maintenance plan.
Fine. Is it being followed? I guess is my question.
Well, part of it too is that there's a log that's supposed to be kept. And I haven't seen, I don't think any log has been, maintenance log. Let me see if I have anything. Nothing here. replaces Gary Magnuson because he had a different conservation commission meeting in Pittsburgh, which is far away to make both of them. I'm an LSP. I don't pretend to be an expert in wetlands regulation. It's peripheral to what I do normally, which is assessment of contamination and remediation of contaminated sites. I'm sure you're well aware that this site was heavily contaminated. And my responsibility was mostly to make sure we cleaned it up, which we have done, and it's now what's considered a temporary solution with the DEP. So that part of it is under control. As far as the sediment and the oil trap, if you will, the absorbing boom in the low area, my understanding was that was something that was supposed to happen during construction redevelopment of the project, not a permanent oil water separator or anything of that nature. I'm aware that there's one catch basin which is not even on the property, it's off the property in the road. There is an area back here where we've installed a holding tank. It's an underground holding tank, and there's a catch basin on top of that, which is basically just a drain into the tank. That is where they currently wash these platforms that they use for concerts, and that's the primary use of the property, to store and to wash those platforms. So we have an area designated here where they can do the washing. The berm is intended to make sure that nothing gets out there. Also, secondarily, to make sure that they don't drive their pallet trucks further into the wetlands and woods and start encroaching on that part of it. That's the reason that the riprap was raised higher. It's a physical barrier, not just a drainage issue.
Now, if it was a drainage issue, would the riprap have plastic or something in it to keep the water from going through it, or is it, is it a drain, meaning to direct water in a certain direction versus just allowing water to run wherever it wants to through a stone? I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm asking the question. You indicated it was there to direct the water, and I don't know how raw riprap can direct the water, that's all.
Well, it's just to break the velocity of the water. That's my understanding how riprap works.
Correct. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
it's-
direct the
it's-
water, just.
It slows the velocity. It's not meant to be a filter or a block.
So it's not directing the water down to the sedimentation trap?
No, it's not a dam. It's riprap.
So is there anything directing, is that sedimentation trap in place, and is there anything directing water down to it?
In this area here we're talking about?
No, this area here.
Okay, so that's the low point you're talking about. As far as I know, that is just the natural slope of the land. It has not been modified since we've been involved in it, other than we've, had to dig up a few inches of the top to get rid of contaminated soil.
Technically, that was supposed to be, this is your design drawings, I'm not making these drawings up, so I mean, the intent was to have something there at one time. And now it's not necessary, so it's reflected on your as-built as not being done?
Again, I don't have an answer for that.
I mean,
I apologize.
I'm
that
trying,
I
no,
don't
I'm
have
trying
the
to
answer.
explain to you why, what my questions
No,
were, that's all.
I'm
I'm not picking
understanding your
it.
question. I am understanding it. I just don't have the answer for it, and I'm not the engineer who did the plans, so I can't.
Isn't there a swale on the other side of the building too, or something?
There's a low area in the back of this building here, that's an isolated wetland. And there was, originally this was, truck ramps on the side of the building, so they had a ramp down to allow a dock at this point. There's a dock here, there's a ramp sloped the other way.
Something about the door in the back too.
The door in the back is a wetland
Right in the back.
right back there. Trying to remember, it was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
in the
something
state.
about them opening the door or not opening the door,
I
or.
got it all right here in the findings of facts.
The applicant, all right, so it was decided that that isolated wetland was a byproduct of years of neglect associated with drainage coming from the building. And the applicant wishes to be able to access the rear bay door, which the wetland is blocking, as well as the ability to drive trucks all the way around the building. Concom agreed to fill the IBBW with a contingency that a mitigation project occur on site, which was the low dam. So if you fix that, go ahead and fill it in. What's that? With that aspect. That's the best thing ever. It'll help somebody 20 years down the line too. It's always like right at the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite remember, and then brings it all back. It's wonderful.
So are you doing a request or?
He's the man.
It's up to me, basically understand my concerns, my questions, and, I think we need answers to those questions before we can issue
Find it totally reasonable.
CLC.
Everybody clear on what the questions are?
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna write it down so I'm in the room, so I don't forget what it is.
questions are basically a reasonably accurate as-built drawing indicating what was done and what wasn't done out there in relation to the original plan drawings, agreed drawings, and any changes that you were made to the original drawings, please provide some sort of detail so we understand what the changes were and what they were. I mean, that's just show me that there was riprap placed on a flat plane someplace as far as I'm concerned. There's no elevations or details, so a change to the drawings were made, please provide a detail telling us what you did. And again, as I say, when we discussed this originally, one of the critical factors, in my recollection, was that we did not want just general runoff from the site to be going untreated into the brook. And it was, either to be put into catch basins and dealt with that way, or what surface runoff was gonna go into that little retention pond, if you wanna call it that, or sediment trap, in the hope of collecting whatever, and that there was an oil boom required in there.
Yes, in fact.
The way I
I just had it highlighted.
The way I remember is something was inside the, like, catch basin.
So
You
it's,
wanted-
hold on a second. Okay, right there. Right there. Special condition 29, the oil boom at the sediment trap shall be maintained and replaced as necessary in perpetuity.
Perpetuity is pretty clear. I have seen the log, by the way, I'll make sure it gets to you.
Thank you. All right, so looks like we're, gonna save this for another day.
Good.
Thanks for being so patient. I was really hoping to get you in earlier,
You want it on the next one?
and, that first one just went a really long time.
Do you want this on the next meeting, or the 1st or the 16th, or?
We would like to close it as soon as possible, so if it go in the next available meeting. I'll make sure that Gary's here, not me.
That would be August 1st,
So
right?
do you wanna do a project update on that?
Yep. Okay, the minutes, June 6th and June 20th.
Have a good night. Make a motion to approve the minutes of June 6th and June 20th, 2018.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Who did the second?
Hmm?
I abstain.
You abstain? Yeah, how come?
I never got them, so I can't approve it.
Oh,
I haven't read them.
okay. The planning board on Barnett Road, they're withdrawing the bridle path thing, but, I was at the planning board meeting, and,
You have to fill out the form.
they said that it had to be rescinded at a public meeting, so they're on the next agenda for the, planning board to rescind it at a public meeting. What we don't know, and I don't know, is if we have to do the same here,
Well,
or we just,
George needs to send us an email or a note or something that they're rescinding.
This goes so far back, it was way before me.
I know it was
I know
bef-
that it's been, it was extended many times, and now it is finally, it hasn't been extended, it's now expired, and there's no walking it back. There has to be a new notice of intent. So that being said, it's still gonna need a certificate of compliance saying that no work was started.
so we can do it that way, we don't have to have a
Right,
public
but
hearing.
they have to file the paperwork.
Okay. All right, so maybe you should send a letter saying that he has to file the paperwork.
Right.
Okay, that's the planning, you need to write that on there for Jen.
Okay. All right. The rest of this stuff I think is pretty much taken care of. I've got the paperwork to go to 21 Uxbridge Road. 10 Partridge Hill Road, I went down there and took pictures from the next door neighbors, and she took out the panels at the bottom of the hill, and I was at the neighbor's house, I gave permission to go in. And she put an electric fence with the dogs with a collar on them across the bottom.
Great idea.
So now she's not looking at the fence, she's looking out into
How about
nature.
on the side though?
This fence is still there on the side, yeah.
So it's still, those panels still have to be pulled back.
She did,
It should,
Oh, she took some of the side ones out too?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, it didn't sound like, it sounded like the end.
No, no, she took the
okay.
side ones out
so
too.
she's in compliance.
So she's in compliance. What I would suggest is that we write a letter asking for permission to go down there to take pictures to verify it.
Well, that's fine. Well, wait a minute. There's still no certificate of compliance, correct? So this,
Right.
the commission has the right,
To go.
under the order of conditions, to inspect it during reasonable hours. That being said, in this situation,
I would recommend informing her, just to be.
Yes,
right, but
Extra-
also, those signs have to be put back up if they're not already back up in the right location. That has to be confirmed as well.
It might be maybe just send her a letter, just thanking her for removing the fence and make sure the signs are up, and please let us know, we'll come out. And
yeah. Make sure the signs are put in the original location, or in the corresponding location to the neighbors, maybe we ought to say, we don't wanna.
So she met that deadline, no fine or anything?
She did,
That's good.
I was at home and it was, I think, the 8th of July, and I said, oh, I better go look. And so I was pleasantly surprised.
Good, excellent.
And wanted to send out the letters, and I think,
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
What about this Leland Hill Estates thing?
We just talked about that.
Aye.
Is that
Oh.
That I
was
just,
Brandon's.
Right, so, anybody know we don't have to talk about, this is,